Alright. Back. Oh, what is it? Imagine that. I've been doing this shit for nearly 9 years. Thing I don't care. Okay. Let's see. Nope. Let's play some Marvel. I will be playing Marvel Rivals here in a little while, but there is a few things I want to complete. Just dropped 2 minutes ago. Completionist is in huge trouble. Ooh, we can watch retro video game commercials too, or retro 1987 Christmas commercials. That would be fun. Oh shit. Pop that out. I guess I could go live on Kick too. I can't go live on Twitch because something happened and I'm trying to get that resolved. But why not? I can go on Kick. Have even less followers on Kick. Like anyone's gonna see it. There you go. Okay. Let's see what Gerard has got going on today. It's been about a year.
Absolute legends. Can you believe it? It's already been more than a year since the completionist and his family's decade-long charity scam was exposed last November. For those who need a quick refresher, between the years of 2014 and 2023, Gerard and his charity, the Open Hand Foundation, took in around $1 million of donations, money that they said was going to various charities focusing on dementia research. But over that entire time, the truth was that they hadn't donated a single penny, and had kept everything.
And
it was only after Mudahar and myself made our videos about the situation that the Open Hand Foundation finally donated some of the money, donating $600,000 to the AFTD. The completionist public image was pretty much destroyed, and deservedly so. He had been lying for years, and after he was exposed, he took no accountability whatsoever. He made up excuses, made up lies, and more than anything was just angry at us for.
And then people were like, that was a pretty high performing video for me, which isn't very good at all, but anyway. And I was like, why didn't they check in for his mom, who was a chief financial advisor? And everyone shit on me because they were like, he doesn't want to bring his mom into it, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't fucking matter. It was a charity. It was like a public charity. Like, what the fuck? It doesn't matter what he wants. If he said, oh, don't investigate me, what the fuck? You think we're not, like, what? What is even happening?
For making the public aware of what he was doing. And it didn't take long for the completionist to return to YouTube and continue making content. After his terrible response video, he just moved on and acted as if this entire charity scandal never happened. And his family moved on and didn't care whatsoever either. They even held another golf charity event several months later. This was immediately after it was already proven that for
didn't he like appear online for a like he came back to to stream, and he like was really sad looking, and he had this like dog or something, and he wasn't like paying attention to anyone. Wasn't that
Years,
like
the
a
golf
thing?
charity money had never even made it to the Open Hand Foundation. The family was keeping everything. But then, around 4 months ago, the completionist disappeared.
Oh,
And
imagine
there
that.
might be a good reason for this. The completionist production company, That One Video Entertainment LLC, is in huge trouble. I've never spoken about this, but for the
Ooh,
past 2 years, the completionist
spicy.
company has been engaged in a frivolous lawsuit against the biggest GTA Online roleplay server, NoPixel, basically trying to extort them for half of their company. And in October, they lost. And now Gerard's company may have to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees.
So Gerard sued. So Gerard got Big Dick Energy and tried to sue this server of Grand Theft Auto Online, and he lost because the judgment is entered in favor of the defendants. Okay.
And the cherry on top
Why?
of all
Like,
of
what the
this
fuck?
is that it appears as though the Open Hand Foundation might now be under investigation by the IRS.
Good.
A lot's been happening, and in today's video, we will take a quick look. I really
Great.
hope you enjoy.
Well, I'm gonna try.
Now, Legends, a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Watcher of Realms. Watcher of Realms is a really fun fantasy RPG that I've played a ton of over the past year. It combines classic fantasy RPG elements with tower defense, which are two of my favorite genres. I love the real-time strategic element that tower defense brings. It makes the gameplay so much more interesting. The graphics are incredible, and there are over 200 unique heroes to collect and develop. And Watcher of Realms is celebrating Christmas time with a brand new limited hero, Sun Wukong. He brings the Christmas cheer with a festive new skin and an awesome event featuring strategic stages,
How does
challenging
he
minigames,
bring
and a
Christmas
beautiful
cheer?
Chinese-inspired map. 'Tis the season for exciting events where
Like,
you can win 74
specifically.
free summons, tons of valuable items, and the new legendary hero Callista with her exclusive artifact,
just play
along with
Marvel.
the powerful mage Alira in her sexy Christmas battlesuit. There are so
Yeah.
many amazing gifts to unlock during these Christmas
You gotta have a
celebrations,
big
and to
titty
receive them all,
Christmas
simply log in
costume, right?
daily and participate in all of the festivities. Watcher of
The
Realms has
boob
a
jiggle
great
and everything.
selection of game modes including the campaign, arena, guild boss, and intense guild v guild battles. And honestly, it's the perfect time to start playing. To download or play Watcher of Realms, just
Isn't
click the
it
link
weird
in
it's
the description
never
or scan
not
the
the
QR
perfect
code
time
on
to start
screen.
playing?
It's available for free on PC, Android,
Somehow.
and iOS.
It's like always the perfect time.
Before we
It's very
start
weird.
today's video, I want to recognize that I know that I have lost
Fucked
a lot
up.
of your trust at
I
home.
fucked up.
And I want to spend as much time as it will take to rebuild and re-earn your trust. It's going to take time, but I'm willing to put in the commitment, and I hope you give me a chance.
This is what Gerard said back in January when he returned to YouTube less than 2 months after his charity scam was exposed. I have no idea what he meant when he said that he wanted to re-earn your trust, because after this statement, he continued to pretend that nothing ever happened and he never spoke of it again. For the next 8 months, Gerard would continue to post videos to his channel, hoping to resuscitate his brand. The quality, however, was now
those are
greatly
like-
diminished because most of his
well, there's still
either either quit
thousands
or
of
he
times
let them
more than I
go.
ever get,
And
but-
then in August, he released a video about alien isolation and hasn't been seen since. But
Oh,
while
just
Gerard was
one
pretending
video.
that everything was hunky-dory on the surface, behind the scenes, shit was hitting the fan. For the past year, many
Okay.
people, including myself, have
Okay.
been waiting for the Open Hand Foundation to file their 2023 IRS tax forms. Personally, I wanted to see if anything changed after they got exposed. Were they suddenly going to start properly declaring their income now that so many eyeballs were focused on their charity? Well, what's
No.
interesting is that the Open Hand Foundation hasn't filed their 2023 IRS tax form,
Well, there you
despite
go.
it being long past the
It's the
deadline.
meme, right?
If you search the charity through the Office of the Attorney General, it says their reporting is incomplete and the IRS form is required. This hasn't happened in any other year. The Open Hand Foundation have always filed their forms on time.
Can't look at it if
So
it
it's
was
very
never
peculiar
filed.
that at a time where it's more important than ever to be transparent, they aren't reporting. Of course, there are multiple possible reasons why they aren't submitting their forms. The most obvious would be they haven't yet done their 2023 accounting, but it could also mean they are
Yep.
currently being audited by the IRS. Personally, I think it's the latter, given how many people reported the charity after the scandal broke. Another piece of evidence to support the fact they are being audited is that it does appear they have already done their 2023 accounting. So there doesn't seem to be any other legitimate reason not to file. We know
Or
they've
just
done their
don't do
2023
it.
accounting because as part of their 2024 annual charity registration to the Office of the Attorney General, they needed to state their revenue and expenses for the previous year, which they did. And this is where things get very interesting. This form doesn't give us any breakdown like the IRS tax forms would, but it does give us a few basic figures. It says that in 2023, the Open Hand Foundation raised $155,000. This is significant because it's by far the most revenue the organization has ever reported in a single year. The previous highest total was back in 2021 when they raised $136,000.
So
But
they
that
raised
was under very
more
different
money?
circumstances. So let's compare. In 2021, Gerard's fundraiser Indieland received $113,000 in donations just through Tiltify alone. The charity also received a $25,000 grant from Jamie Lee Curtis's charity, Syzygy. Just these two income sources alone already amount to more than the $136,000 they reported, which means all of the bits, subs, merch sales, and all of the golf charity money simply vanished. Gerard's company or his family just took the rest. And this pattern of money vanishing continued from the years 2019 all the way through to 2022, a total of 4 years. And the money that went missing probably totaled several $100,000. But in 2023, after the public realized Gerard's family was stealing money, suddenly everything changed. In 2023, Indieland only raised $64,000 in donations through Tiltify. This is $50,000 less than in 2021. And yet magically, 2023 was the Open Hand Foundation's best year ever, raising $20,000 more than they did in 2021. It is a miracle. By the grace of God, the Khalil family has finally learned how to properly report their income. It's amazing. We already knew that Gerard and his company were stealing money before, but this most recent accounting is just the nail in the coffin. It is so brazenly obvious that once they were exposed, they decided it would be unwise to continue skimming off the top. And as a result, despite last year being one of Indieland's worst performing years ever by far, the Open Hand Foundation was more profitable than it's ever been. Another interesting thing about this form is that it shows the Open Hand Foundation is still holding on to $200,000. And this is before their 2024 golf charity event, where they would have collected even more in donations. Why are they still keeping this money? One thing I've come to realize is that while Gerard may have been very concerned with his public image, his family, specifically his brother and father, couldn't care less. This is why back in May they continued running their golf charity tournament as if nothing ever happened. If you look at the Open Hands website now, Indieland has been removed as one of the charity events, leaving only the golf tournament. And the golf event was never something that Gerard was a part of organizing. And it's why the Open Hand Foundation now feels comfortable going back to hoarding donations, because the public backlash that was originally directed at Gerard now has nowhere to go. When the Open Hand Foundation made their $600,000 donation after the story initially broke, they still had $200,000 sitting in the bank. And this is only from the reported income. As I said before, I suspect Gerard's family has siphoned hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the charity over the years. But I can't think of a single good reason why they still need to keep $200,000 in the bank, when their expenses average around $10,000 to $15,000 per year. And literally the only purpose of the charity is to be a middleman between Good Samaritans and charities that actually do dementia research. As I said before, the lack of filing to the IRS is a pretty good indication the charity is now under investigation. And I really do hope this is the case. But the IRS isn't the only thing Gerard now has to worry about.
Probably get a good chunk of money for some of those video games if they're complete in box.
Lawsuit. That One Video Entertainment LLC is the company that Gerard created in 2012 that all of his business activities fall under, including all of his YouTube channels and his charity event, Indieland. I will be calling it TOVE for short. On Gerard's LinkedIn page, he states he is the owner, president, and CEO of TOVE. And in April of 2023, Tove sued GTA Online's most well-known role-playing server,
April?
NoPixel.
Okay, this was
NoPixel is owned by
before.
Coil Content Creation Proprietary Limited, which was started by a fellow Aussie, Mitchell Clout, otherwise known online as Coil. If you follow The Completionist, but don't follow GTA Online role-playing,
Yeah.
you've probably never heard of this lawsuit. And even if you have, you probably have the wrong idea about who is suing who. And that's because the reporting on this lawsuit has been abysmal and full of misinformation. It all started in May 2023, when a user posted the lawsuit to Reddit, claiming that DW was suing NoPixel. DW was a developer that worked for NoPixel for several years, but he and NoPixel's owner Coil had a falling out in December of 2022, and DW ended his relationship with the server. The day after this viral Reddit post, Dexerto signal boosted the story, with the headline, "Former GTA RP NoPixel server dev DW is suing owner Coil for considerable sum."
Why do I care
However,
about this?
this was all completely false. It wasn't DW that was suing NoPixel, it was the completionist company, Tove. It literally says who the parties are on the first page of the lawsuit. I don't understand how everyone got this wrong. Tove's lawsuit asserted that because DW developed some code for the NoPixel servers and DW was an employee of Tove,
Really, Carl? You don't know how people that probably got this information from like social media got it wrong? Has he ever played the telephone game? Or been on the internet for like 5 seconds?
this meant that Tove owned the code that DW developed, and thus Tove should own half of NoPixel. But this entire lawsuit was a shakedown and an extortion attempt from day one. It was all bullshit. We are talking Billy Mitchell levels of frivolous. Everything about this lawsuit was a lie.
There's
and
a Billy
it's going
Mitchell
to take
update
a separate
too.
and quite lengthy video to cover everything in detail. But if you thought that charity was the only scam that Gerard and his company were pulling, you couldn't be more wrong. Needless to say, this lawsuit never made it to trial. In October, the judge ruled in favor of NoPixel.
Don't like
and now
most
NoPixel
lawsuits
is seeking
never make
attorney's
it to
fees
trial.
of $233,000. And they
I'm
are
pretty sure I'm
probably
right on-
going to get it. Unlike most other lawsuits in America, when you sue specifically for copyright infringement, it's actually built right into the statute that you can get attorney's fees if you win. And because Tove's lawsuit was so frivolous, and the judge didn't even see a need to go to trial before ruling in NoPixel's favor, Tove is probably going to have to pay up big time. As soon as the judge makes a ruling on the most...
So, he went... This guy worked for this server or something, but he was also part of Gerard's enclave, for lack of a better word. He complained, so then his company thing, whatever, sued them because it was frivolous, or maybe even more than that, some other reason. If he won, he doesn't even... They don't get the attorney's fees from the other person that would have had to pay them, or they don't pay him anyway. So then he's booked with all of these fees, and this shit comes out about the charity while this is still going on, I assume. And he's fucked.
For attorney's fees, I will do a full breakdown of this lawsuit, because it really proves that Gerard's shady behavior surrounding his charity was not an isolated event. Until then, thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.
I'm gonna be real that it probably shouldn't have been a 13-minute video. But I get it. You gotta get over that 10-minute mark. Still, though, probably shouldn't have been a 13-minute video. I haven't had Burger King forever. I used to love Burger King. I guess I still do. I haven't had it in forever, though. There was a Billy Mitchell thing. Mitchell. Date? I don't know what you call it. Yeah, this is it. 2 days ago. Let's see.
All right, our next case is case number 2023-0432, Mitchell versus Race.
Hello, you absolute legends. This is Billy Mitchell's lawyer. And these are the justices of the Supreme Court of Florida. Billy is trying desperately to stop his ridiculous and frivolous lawsuit against the world's greatest Pac-Man player, David Race, from being thrown out. And Billy is going to fail. Billy is famous for suing or...
Dude, this is video games. This is video games. Oh, well, we got the second part of CoffeeZilla that I watched earlier today. The second part just came out like an hour ago.
Threatening to sue people who call him a cheater. Everyone already knows this. But defamation lawsuits aren't the only stupid lawsuits he likes to file. And Billy's lawsuit against David Race is arguably his dumbest
this is
ever.
a different one.
Billy
Okay.
sued David Race back in April of 2021 because...
Is that man's hair just like a helmet? Because I've never seen it any other way.
As David
It's
recorded
like
phone calls
hairspray
between him and Billy. David wasn't
I don't know.
recording these calls because he had some evil scheme to expose Billy at some point or for nefarious reasons. He recorded them because he records all of his calls with everyone. David is a resident of Ohio, where you don't need the other person's consent to record your calls. What David did was normal and legal where he lives. In fact, when David recorded these calls, which occurred between 2018 and 2019, David and Billy were friends, and David was
thumbs
a
up.
vocal supporter of Billy. But at some point, after reviewing much of the evidence against Billy, David came to the rational conclusion that not only did Billy cheat, but Billy had been lying.
You know what's going on
Lying
here
direct-
too? He's like clearly going gray, but he's dyed his beard, but like you can see here, like on the periphery of it, is like definitely gray, and it's pretty funny.
To him and using him as a pawn. After learning the truth that Billy is a con man, David then chose to help Twin Galaxies in their lawsuit against Billy by providing
Betrayal.
them with a
Top 10
recording of a
anime
phone call
betrayals.
showing that Billy was the type of person to lie and trick people. Billy was pissed that David was now helping Twin Galaxies. So Billy did what Billy does when he is upset with someone. He sued him. Billy claimed that what David did was illegal
It's the
because Billy
American
lives
way.
in Florida, where you do need consent to record calls. But that's just not how it works. It doesn't matter where Billy lives, it matters where David lives. And where David lives, it's totally legal. And the court agreed. In March
Does it matter who's like making the call, like which way the call is going? Because
of
That'd be interesting.
2023, the appeal court dismissed the lawsuit, literally saying that what David did was legal and that Billy's lawsuit was offensive. But Billy's crusade against David knew no bounds, and he took it all the way to the Supreme Court of Florida, where finally, in November of 2024, they agreed that the lawsuit is to be thrown out for good. In this video, we will take a quick look at Billy's most recent failed attempt to sue an innocent person. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, it's Christmas time, and what better way to spoil yourself or someone you love than with a beautiful poster from Displate. Displate offers metal posters that not only look amazing, but are also very durable and easy to install using their magnet mounting system. Not only does this avoid damaging
really
your
call it
walls, but it also
installing
means
it.
you can
I
quickly
guess you
swap them
do.
around whenever you want. I think if you love a
I
game
would
or
get
a
some
story,
Displates. How
you
much
should
are they?
celebrate it with a gorgeous piece of artwork. Displate offers officially licensed designs from all of your favorite game, TV, and movie franchises. These artworks are just incredible, and there are more than 2 million to choose from.
That's a
If
lot.
you don't have Displate posters on your walls, you are missing out big time. Displate ships very quickly all around the world. I live all the way out in Australia, and I get mine in around 3 or 4 days, which is insane. And
So
of
it's like
course,
negative
Displate is offering an
3
amazing
days.
discount for Christmas,
It's
so
like
just click the
opposite
link
of
in the
Earth.
description or use code Carl at checkout to get up to 26% off your order.
They're like
Please
50
click the link
bucks.
and grab a Displate today. First, I
100
want
for
to
a
give you a
large
quick
one?
update on what's
Jesus.
happening with my own lawsuit against Billy. As many of you know, in September and October, I went to trial because of Billy's defamation lawsuit against me. I've had a lot of people ask me what's going on, and if there has been a decision. So let me explain the process. My trial will be decided by a judge, and these decisions take time. It's not as simple as the judge just saying who won. As part of the decision process, they need to draft an extremely long and in-depth opinion about everything that happened during trial. This involves talking about all of the witnesses, all of the evidence given, all of the existing case law, and much more. And because my trial was relatively long, this decision is also going to be really long and involved. This takes time, and we will probably be waiting months for the judge to come back with his decision. And I don't know what that decision is going to be. During trial, Billy lied a lot, and ultimately what this will come down to is whether or not the judge believes anything Billy says. I think we made it pretty clear that Billy is a liar, but we're obviously biased, so who knows what the judge is thinking. Whatever the decision is, you will know as soon as it comes out. Even though many people who've read about my trial say they think I will win, I am keeping myself very humble. For my own mental health, I have already accepted the worst case scenario. I am already psychologically prepared to lose. I think the worst thing that could happen is I get my hopes up, think I'm definitely going to win, and then end up losing. I'd rather assume I've already lost, deal with the grief early, and then hopefully be pleasantly surprised by a positive result. Either way, it won't affect this channel, and I hope that if I do lose, I will still have your support. Recording a phone call without consent is legal in Ohio. It's important to know this context at the outset, because for the past 3 years, Billy Mitchell has put an innocent man through hell with this vindictive lawsuit. Until you've been sued yourself, it's honestly hard to appreciate just how destructive a lawsuit can be to someone's life. So while many of you obviously accept that suing an innocent person is morally wrong, the full extent of just how bad an action this is won't truly be understood by many people. And I do hope that Billy's actions result in him being further ostracized from the gaming community. Because he didn't just sue anyone, he sued the best Pac-Man player ever. Billy always claims that he wants to champion video game competition, and that he is some shining beacon for the community, like he says in this clip here.
If I have achieved all that I could in the gaming world, I need to now push and advocate for competitive gaming, the players, the notoriety, the recognition, and all that they deserve.
But ironically, he is literally the worst thing to ever happen to video game high school competition. I mean, just his cheating alone would have been bad enough to solidify him as one of the most destructive figures in gaming history. But to go after so many fellow gamers who rightfully call out his cheating is even worse. Billy clearly does not care about the gaming community, because his actions towards other gamers are just evil. When you sue someone, one of the first things the court must establish is if it even has personal jurisdiction over the defendant. In this case, Billy, a Florida resident, sued David, an Ohio resident, and he sued him in a Florida court. And it's up to Billy to argue why Florida can dictate what laws David should obey. The reality in this case is that Florida doesn't have jurisdiction over David. If David owned property in Florida or conducted business in Florida, it would be different. But neither of these things are true. David really doesn't have any contact with Florida at all. The only contact he had with Florida is the fact that he occasionally spoke with Billy, and Billy lives there. But just having conversations with people who live in a particular state isn't enough to give that state jurisdiction over you. And this is why in March of 2023, the District Court of Appeal dismissed the lawsuit. And in their opinion, they made it very clear that what David did was perfectly legal, and that any action brought against him in Florida would be unjust. They said, it is significant that the conduct that offends the Florida plaintiff, the recording of phone calls without his consent, is not illegal in Ohio, where the calls were recorded. The recording of the calls is not malum se, a wrong or evil in itself that is prohibited everywhere. Where a defendant legally records a phone conversation in his home state and has no other significant contacts with Florida, it offends traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice to require him to appear in Florida to defend against a lawsuit for an alleged violation of the Florida Security of Communications Act. We therefore reverse and remand to the Circuit Court with directions to enter an order dismissing the case for a lack of personal jurisdiction. This opinion was written by Judge Gross and was signed off on by the Chief Judge Mark Klingensmith. Now you would think that having the Chief Judge of the District Court of Appeal tell
Oh, okay.
Mark
I see.
Klingensmith. Now, you would think that having the Chief Judge of the District Court of Appeal tell you that this lawsuit is offensive would perhaps give Billy some pause to reflect and reconsider his legal vendetta. But no, he continued
I don't give a
pushing
shit.
and took it all the way to the Supreme Court of Florida. In May of 2024, Billy's lawyer stood in front of the justices and tried to argue that Florida should have jurisdiction. But his arguments were bizarre. For example, one of his arguments related to the fact that David posted on his Facebook account that it was illegal to record calls without consent in Florida. And because David knew it was illegal in Florida, this is supposed to mean that he shouldn't have done it in Ohio.
Correct.
So I understand that there's a sense in which this is some murky thing about where is the conversation occurring and everything, but if the whole point of all this personal jurisdiction stuff is to focus on what the defendant is doing and the connection between what the defendant does and the form. I mean, everything the defendant did, the recording, the speaking, I mean, it was all in Ohio. And what state was he in?
Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah, that is correct. He was physically located in Ohio, according to his affidavit. If I can take 1 second, Justice, you raised a point about whether or not whether or not the defendant knew my client was in Florida. He did subsequently post on Facebook that he went to justia.com and copied Florida statutes for the Chapter 934 and copied it on there and said, it is illegal in Florida to record a phone call unless all parties give consent. I'm paraphrasing.
I have questions about that as well, but I think if you could answer the Chief's question. Then.
This argument is of course irrelevant, because David lives in Ohio, and was in Ohio at the time. But this is just what Billy's lawyers love to do. They throw out nonsensical arguments hoping to confuse the situation. Billy's lawyer honestly looked like a bumbling buffoon when he was trying to explain why Florida should have jurisdiction.
All right. The answer is yes, he was located in Ohio at the time, but for the purposes of committing a tort in Florida under the long-arm statute, if an intercept, and there's no reason to depart from Mozo in this particular instance, since intercept means that he intercepted the call, strike that, since the law is such that where my client spoke means that the call was intercepted in Florida. In other words, under Mozo and under France and under the definitions of oral communication and other definitions in the statutes, basically Race intercepted the calls in Florida. It was enough to...
No. You fire something and wherever it hits, that whenever... It's not from the base of operations, it's the intended target is the intercept. Right? If Billy called him?
Commit a tortious act in Florida. It is enough to state that the tort as alleged occurred in Florida, which is really all you need for 1B jurisdiction, or 1A2, excuse me. So...
In the end, the justices were not convinced, and ended up discharging jurisdiction, which means that they didn't make a decision either way, and accepted the decision made by the District Court of Appeal. The Supreme Court opinion stated, "In the end, while this case presents many interesting issues, we conclude those issues are largely academic in the context of the unique procedural history of this case. As a result, we exercise our discretion, discharge jurisdiction, and dismiss this proceeding." And that's it. It's over. After 3.5 years, David Reyes has finally won for good. For the past 3 years, I have heard Billy claim over and over that David illegally recorded his calls. He even declared this in his other lawsuits.
Why are you suing Mr. Reyes?
I'm suing him because he illegally
fucking moron.
Recorded 27 phone calls between he and I.
But this was never true. It was always a lie. Perhaps now Billy will stop repeating this lie, but I'm really not getting my hopes up. Billy will of course try to sweep this under the rug, just like he always does when he loses a lawsuit. Don't expect an apology from Billy, or an admission that this lawsuit was wrongly filed. In fact, if Billy had his way, he would never comment on this again, and everyone would simply forget it ever happened. That's what Billy wants. But I'm sorry, I just can't let that happen. On a more positive note, it really seems like Billy's legal crusade is coming to an end. All of his lawsuits have either been dismissed or settled. Note that Billy has never ever actually won. The only lawsuit Billy has remaining is the one against me.
Come on,
Am
Carl.
I really going to be the only person Billy wins against? Oh boy, wouldn't that just be hilarious. Thank you so much for watching,
Funny
you
as
legends. Shit. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you.
Imagine the the one, the fucking one. That would be so funny. I'd kind of want to do it just to make fun of myself. Oh god, that was so funny. A little bit disappointing. I thought it was gonna be about the other thing, but let's do the Counter-Strike one.
They have made millions and millions of euros.
This is fucking wild. It's video games, people. Fucking video games.
I get told that they had posted flyers everywhere in my city. And I mean everywhere. High schools, malls.
They need to go in, even if there's a security guard, even if they're gonna be taken away. If somebody goes home walking, they will be fired.
They sent 18 people outside my door having a quote-unquote protest.
This guy looks like Bill Skarsgård.
With other sites as well. Most of the CSGO gambling sites
who I love,
are
by the way.
scams.
I want to
Big
know who's really
Skarsgård
behind this
fan.
thing. Who's really the victims and who's really the villain.
In our last video, we got bribed, but instead of taking it, we exposed the people who offered it. Now it's time to expose the rest of the Counter-Strike gambling industry and the influencers who promote it for millions a year. Let's start with the basics of what Counter-Strike gambling really is, though. Counter-Strike is a first-person shooter video game where you can buy cosmetic options for your guns called skins. You can get these by paying $2.50 to open a loot box. It spins like a slot machine, and you get a random skin. There's an entire economy that's grown out of their rarity, and you can sell these skins for pennies or up to tens of thousands of dollars depending on their rarity. You can then take those skins to Counter-Strike casinos where they will be accepted as currency instead of cash. They use their real-world value to turn this video game into Vegas. You can play slots, roulette, and more, all with a video game skin. Think of it like their version of poker chips. And when I first began to investigate this, I thought, why don't people just use a regular casino? You know, why use Counter-Strike skins?
Because
well,
you can
decided
get little
to investigate
kids
by interviewing a bunch of people who do use Counter-Strike casinos, and I found a disturbing trend.
They're like little kids.
I've been in the gambling community in Counter-Strike for about, I'd say since 12 years old.
I started gambling on
100%.
Counter-Strike when I was probably 13 years old.
13 years old. 14 years old.
I think I was 14. Started gambling on CSGO at the age of 12 and 13, pretty much right around there, my 13th birthday.
Yeah, most of the people I spoke to started gambling underage.
Yeah,
it was
100%.
while they were playing the game.
It's not really wild.
This trend continues beyond the anecdotal. This YouTuber named Jeff.
Oh yeah, you go to a porn site. Are you 18 years of older? Yeah, sure.
Surveyed over 9,000 players. He found that around 70% of Counter-Strike gamblers start underage. Now, themed casinos have always had an audience,
higher.
but with Counter-Strike,
there
is an underage gateway to all of this because all you need is $2.50 to get your first skin through Valve, and you don't even need to show ID, which is a huge part of this. Even worse, when you go from the game to the casinos, which are hosted on third-party websites, most don't ID the players either. Or if they do, it's only after you've already gambled thousands of dollars, which is a bit like if a liquor store asked for ID after you drank 10 bottles of liquor. It's obviously absurd, but it's also very profitable because underage gamblers not only are new customers, they're way more likely to become gambling addicts, which is how casinos make most of their money. These days, most physical casinos have a strict ID policy at the door. This isn't because they're good people, it's because they're heavily regulated and would lose their gambling license if they knowingly allowed underage players. But Counter-Strike gambling is fundamentally different. Regulation for these casinos is almost non-existent because they're offshore.
Oh, yeah.
Malta, Curacao, Cyprus, and most of them are using loopholes to pretend that this isn't even gambling at all. Look, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because different casinos use different loopholes, but suffice to say, this has been going on a long time. Back in 2016, a very similar story broke in a big way about scam casinos, and underage gambling
That's when my
problems
life
in
wasn't
Counter-Strike.
complete
And
shit.
everyone was understandably enraged. Valve even got involved, had to send out cease and desist letters. Even the FTC went after
I remember
influencers.
that.
But when the
I
dust
remember that.
settled, there weren't that many consequences. Part of the reason was because of these loopholes. In fact, the most infamous casino, CSGO Lotto, claimed not even to be a casino at all. They said they were a sweepstakes. Now, this is obviously absurd. It's not true, but none of that matters because it got them out of trouble. And so the same types of casinos have continued.
You know, as a big fan of cyberpunk and synthwave and shit like that, his setup is so fucking cool because it's like old, but it's cyberpunk. I don't know. It has nothing to do with anything, but I really like. I like his like backgrounds and these videos where he like talks to his like robotic bartender. It has nothing to do with anything, but I thought I'd throw that out there to nobody.
Owners and new names. What you're left with then is an industry that is unregulated, if anything, self-regulated, which I discovered creates its own race to the bottom problem. Because consumer protection in an unregulated market will literally drive away your customers. For example, remember Monarch from the last video?
Meme coin? Yeah, 100%.
Casino CSGO Empire.
One
of the things they do that I actually think is good
Could you imagine?
is they block certain IPs where gambling is illegal. And they admit that
Glare
what they're
coin
doing
or
is
something
gambling.
stupid.
Now, you can easily get around these geo restrictions with a VPN, but it's sort of an extra hurdle. Most Counter-Strike casinos don't even do this. And listen to one gambler explain why this tiny decision to just geo-block one region, the US, affected who he chose to gamble with.
So when I went onto Empire, while it's still easy to bypass it,
I got better
you
shit
can just
to do.
put a VPN, just takes an extra 5 minutes. CSGO roll, I can just once again type it into my browser. Deposits.
Oh, you're an American.
Yes, correct.
Of course, he's an American.
So no VPN restriction, no geo blocking.
Yes, correct. So on Roll, 0 VPN blocking, 0 any bypassing. On Empire, there is blocking, but it truthfully is very easy.
Shit is fucking wild.
Right. That makes sense. Most people end up
goddamn
going with
video
a casino
game. Come
who
on.
asks them less questions, requires less from you. Even if you're not illegally trying to gamble, you just don't want to have to put in personal information, anything like that.
Hats off to these people for taking that much time and effort to do this shit, but I guess it pays off.
Casinos want toddlers gambling. It's also market dynamics, right? You get a competitive edge by not regulating. Less work, more customers, more money. Which means you can't just solve the problem by wagging your finger at bad casinos.
Also, toddlers have very little money. Well, I don't know. Maybe they do not. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck is going on.
The entire system is broken. As long as these loopholes exist, why would anyone change? In fact, some websites like Clash.gg even advertise their lack of regulation as a feature, not a bug. The CEO even bragged on Twitter, quote, Clash
we'll take like 1-year-olds' monies
instantly with no verification. Couldn't be more happy with.
I bet a 5-year-old could get around this with how much they have screen time and shit now. I don't know like when kids learn all this stuff. Like I probably could have done it around 8 years old. But I have no idea like the skill level of kids today with the internet since they've grown up with it.
The product and reputation we are building.
Maybe not 8, maybe about 9 or 10.
Checks. And it is a positive reputation if you want to appeal to underage players, money launderers, or just people who want to avoid a hassle, a VPN and putting in an ID. And this is all a huge problem. But how big of a problem is it, you might wonder? After all, we're talking about video game skins. How much money could this industry really be worth? I wondered the same thing.
A lot. Those motherfuckers got $16 from me for that goddamn Scarlet Witch skin. I'm not proud of it, but it happened.
So I asked around for how much these casinos are making and got several estimates. One owner claims he has an 8-figure business, and someone who worked for his partner claims that is true. How much does he make on Clash?
His partner, Boris, right, also known as Dogs Playing Poker, Friendly Chemist, he told me directly that it was making about $50 million a month.
That's a lot of money.
I believe it.
Roughly matches what the popular gambling Counter-Strike YouTuber, told me as well, saying he'd estimate these sites are making tens of millions monthly.
How
And there
many
so
people are
many
on
of these
Counter-Strike
sites that the
right
YouTuber
now?
Jeff estimated it all in a different way, looking at the total amount of website traffic compared to a popular online casino.
So when you bring them together, those CSGO websites bring almost double the traffic of the biggest online casino today. And this online casino declared a gross revenue of 2.6 billion in 2022. Now, that doesn't mean the CSGO websites are grossing more, but it's a great element to put things in perspective.
So even though it's tough getting an exact number, since these casinos might overestimate or underestimate
601,000 in the last 24 hours. It's been like 1.6 million.
Huge amounts of money, and there's many of these casinos. We've just focused on a few in our videos, but there's so many more of these websites, each potentially making millions a month. And no one's going to change their behavior until they're incentivized to by regulation across the board. Until then, less regulation will always mean a wider customer base, even if some of those customers are underage.
Well,
the irony here being the biggest voice of change so far really has been Monarch. From the last video, you guys know I am no fan of this guy's methods, but I'll be honest, there's large parts of his public arguments that are hard to argue with. He claims to understand the underage problem because that's how he started as well.
How I got into gambling myself was when I was 13.
It's a weird thing. I've never played RuneScape. It's a weird thing. Because, like, people are like, oh, you got to do it the legal way and stuff. And, like, what if you tried that for years and years and years, decades even, and nothing works? You got to... I'll just say I can understand people taking shit into their own hands if they've attempted again and again and again to get these like blatant laws passed, regulations passed, etc. And they just never do. And then you go and pop somebody like a CEO because, you know, if you break a leg, that's it. You're pretty much dead. Because you're not going to go to the hospital because you'll never be able to get out of that and hope it heals. And then, like, oh, you got to go the right way of doing it. Well, people have tried that and it doesn't work. What the fuck else do you want people to do? I'm not going to do it. And I'm not saying anyone else should. I'm just saying it's not surprising what kind of shit happens and how people have to take stuff into their own hands because they can't do anything.
And how the dual arena was like a gateway drug for me. That's how gambling started for me, and that's where it went into third-party sites. I'm just disgusted about this whole loop. I think that the whole case system on Steam is pretty horrible. The way how
loot boxes.
There's no KYC. There's it's such a powerful tool for getting children and even adults. I think even adults, they have a gambling problem. It's not only like it's not a age exclusive thing.
He's right.
It's just a machine that makes people gamble. Imagine there's a kid who just plays CSGO and they open one box. Pretty innocent. They get their mom's credit card. They spend €2 to open a box.
Sure.
And then they open a second box, third box, fourth box, and so on. And soon they see their favorite influencer playing on some third-party case opening site. And this is where it's like switching from weed straight to, I don't know, amphetamine or something. And they just
I skipped weed and went directly to the shrooms.
And so they are addicted. And the next thing you know,
don't do amphetamines.
When they want to stop gambling, it's easy to just shut, like close these websites. But what happens when you go on social media? You go on YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, any platform. What do you get? You get gambling ads everywhere. The algorithm starts feeding you.
It's like what's number one on Kick, right?
Addicted to heroin, and then everywhere you go, you just see like heroin. Here, look, your hero is taking heroin.
So
yeah, pretty much.
We have to separate these two things out. Yes, this guy's methods are terrible, but I'll admit, it's nice to see a casino owner talking honestly about their industry and admitting that what it is gambling and not some kind of sweepstakes. But even if Monarch says he wants to change, without the actual power of a regulator, he just ends up having to harass people, threaten people, which isn't going to get him anywhere. Not only that, he's no saint either. His own website doesn't ID people right away. According to CSGO's Empire's terms, they only require you to verify your age if you want to withdraw more than 2,000 coins in crypto or deposit substantial amounts of money. If you withdraw via skins, there is no limit. So even the guy who claims he started underage gambling, he understands the gateway drug that skin betting websites act as, even he refuses to fully ID customers because he knows he'd go out of business.
I'm really committed to, I want to make it stricter and stricter. Like, you can't jump to the deep end just like immediately on one day. That would make us go out of business. But really
But you got to give them a little taste, right? Just a little bit for free. No barriers.
I want to do full-blown KYC before anybody deposits. I want to make it as clean as possible.
This, more than anything, shows the limit to the let's self-regulate idea, right? Even the biggest critic of underage gambling can't bring himself to actually ID his customers up front because his competitors won't do it, and he says it would ruin his business. So maybe the solution isn't with the casinos at all. Maybe it's a good time to talk about the influencers who promote it instead. Because when I learned and asked about people who got into this type of gambling, I wondered, how did they get into it in the first place? Who did they hear about it from? And one thing kept popping up.
One of the primary ways I actually learned was through
PewDiePie. No, he never did any of this shit.
Because I was a big fan of Counter-Strike. I'd play it, you know, in my free time. Some gambling videos popped up and I thought, hey, you know.
Streamers kind of exposed me to that space first.
I saw it online. I saw a bunch of these YouTubers playing it.
I exposed people to saxophones.
Pretty much through watching people on Twitch.
I've actually gotten a
YouTube.
few
Juicy
people to
was
play
one of
it.
them. I actually remember very vividly. He was this guy
Pretty
that would
happy
do
about that.
all these case openings on different websites and such. He was very much affiliated with them. He had codes and all these things.
I've been surrounded by like Syndicate and like FaZe Clan, for example.
I watched my favorite YouTubers.
Right. YouTubers and streamers, of course, are going to be one of the main advertising vectors. It's been that way since 2016. Influencers are the main lifeblood of these casinos. Fast forward 8 years later, it's just different influencers, different casinos making the money than before. But unlike casinos, who we know intuitively are blood-sucking leeches on society, influencers, by contrast, are
just people.
They're, well, we expect more from them. We don't get it, but we expect more. So I wanted to confront
You should
three
never
different
expect more
influencers
from anyone.
who do this gambling streaming
People
stuff
are
of
awful.
different sizes and get their opinions on why they promote this stuff and how they can possibly justify it.
I don't think people should gamble, honestly, on the sites. They shouldn't gamble at all.
But I'm going to do it.
But I enjoy doing it, so it's what I do.
That's true.
If that makes sense.
And that's a thing, is like, if you're going to do whatever the fuck you want to do, then do it. It's your little, like, space on the internet. That's what I say about my stuff. Nobody watches my shit. I don't really care. If I did, I would approach this in a much different way. But yeah, it's his site, like, yeah.
And he says, I don't know.
No. That part of it makes sense. That the part where you want to do it so you continue to do it, that makes sense.
Sure.
But let's say I'm like, I don't think smoking's good for you, but I like smoking. It makes sense that I would smoke. It doesn't make sense that I would go promote it to get people to smoke.
I definitely understand that perspective too. And it's a very good argument, and it's like you can't really argue against it, right? It's not a good thing, but it's something that I still enjoy doing, and so I'm going to continue to do it.
Is it just too much money? That's an acceptable answer. It's just too much money to turn down.
I'd say in the beginning it probably was too much money. At this point, it's not about the money for me. It's just I really enjoy doing it.
So
in the videos,
here's another thing though. So he said in the beginning it was too much money, which means that he made a lot of money, which means that he probably has a lot of money now. And now the gambling, he doesn't see the negative aspect of it because he has all of that money. And so it doesn't even enter his mind that he's promoting this or anything. Really. He's just there to, I don't know, you got a shitload of money, you're doing what you love. What about it? That being said, he could make that like 18 plus stream or whatever, but again, like I said earlier, like none of that's regulated. You get a pop-up. Are you 18 or older? Yeah, sure. Like,
I don't sugarcoat. I don't try to convince people that winning or gambling is a way or a solid option to flip a quick buck. Even in my wins, I preface that this is not a sustainable thing. So it's not something that I necessarily. I don't know. You can watch the videos and decide for yourself if it feels like promotion, but that's how I reason it to myself.
Yeah, look at all the, oh my god,
the videos and decide for yourself.
400,000 like in huge blinding green letters. I'm not promoting it though.
If it feels like promotion, but that's how I reason it to myself. I don't even, use the rewards. I don't advertise it at all. So I don't,
except for the fun looking thumbnails.
It's more of like I said, I don't advertise it. So I don't feel guilty.
But you do advertise. You get paid to advertise.
He's right.
Like, not the rewards.
Like, just say that I enjoy it and I make a lot of money and I don't really give a fuck who watches it and I'm gonna keep making money. Just say it. Everyone does it. Everyone.
No, I don't mention the rewards.
No. I'm saying CS:GO roll.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about the gambling side.
Yes.
We both know it's not going to be good for people. And then you're kind of saying, well, I don't really promote it. I don't really advertise it. But in a way, if you didn't promote or advertise it, they wouldn't pay you millions of dollars.
Yeah, I watched your Trainwrecks video and you said the same thing. You're like, the less dirtier of the dirt bags. So I guess I would call myself that. And ultimately,
good, just own
if you
it.
Watch the video.
Who cares?
You can decide like how less dirty is he really. But yeah, that's my answer.
Most people are going to, unfortunately, gamble.
I have a very cynical view on
certain
people.
streamers.
Sorry.
Right? Obviously, it's intended to be like a McDonald's ad. You see a McDonald's ad, you see a Big Mac, you're gonna go, I'm craving a Big Mac.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept.
Advertising
You're
works
saying
on
like,
me.
Oh, I'm just like kind of
Shit, dude. I was at work the other day. I saw an ad for Taco Bell. You goddamn right. I got 2 chicken quesadillas on the way home. I am like the person advertising works the most on.
promoting McDonald's, whatever.
No, it's not. It's not like promoting McDonald's. Let's be honest. Gambling
is
a terrible addiction. My closest friend,
is it not? McDonald's is terrible for you. You don't really ever get. Well, you get like the 1 or 2 hits of dopamine probably when you bite into that Big Mac and you taste that sweet and saltiness. You get addicted to it. I don't know. I disagree with that. Now, like on a spectrum of is gambling or eating McDonald's bad? Like, yeah, but I mean,
very, very bad gambling addiction. He'll get paid on, let's say, a Tuesday, and by Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, his whole paycheck is gone for 2 weeks, and then he has no money. And no matter what I do to intervene to help that individual try to hold his money, to help him sit there and self-exclude, he finds ways because it's an addiction. It's just.
But he might win and make $1 million.
Yeah, the answers were part admissions, part rationalizations. They all knew gambling was bad, but they'd stop short of actually doing something about it because they were making money from it.
Yeah.
Even when they knew people
gotta
whose
live.
own lives were hurt by it. So if you know the harm firsthand, you've seen it in your own life, how do you justify peddling that
He doesn't
drug,
care,
as you call it?
It's going to happen in my opinion, right? And like, there is no justification. Can I say like I'm a drug dealer? Sure, you could. You're gonna label certain streamers are gonna be labeled as a drug dealer, in essence, and that's okay, I guess, if people are going to view it that way. I mean, I want
to know how you view it.
How I feel
because you said it was kind of like a drug. So I want.
It is a drug. I mean, it hits the dopamine levels. Hell, I get hit in dopamine levels if I hit big. It's and then that becomes a YouTube trick.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I do. Right? I hate to hear when people say I've lost money. I hate it, dude. I really, it crushes me because some people legit do it because they're bored and then they lose everything they have. And it is a terrible feeling to hear that, right?
Not to question their sincerity, but I've heard all of them say that they hate when people get addicted. They don't want to see anyone hurt.
They don't hate it enough.
Even though they know casinos are run on addicts.
Yep.
Fun fact, Clash.gg, who earlier we had their CEO admitting he was proud of not IDing players, also admitted that the majority of their revenue comes from a tiny fraction of their most addicted players. Quote, less than 1% of Clash accounts make up 80% of our revenue. It's just an admission from their founder. It's an open secret. So these influencers can empathize about how horrible addiction is.
I don't even know if it's a secret.
Paycheck comes from. The CEO of Clash has a profile on Twitter.
I don't even know if that's a secret.
Never gamble, the house always wins. But ironically, his house is probably from people gambling. The fact of the matter is that these people say with their mouth, I feel terrible, I feel bad. But when it comes to actually changing, they never do. Even when they directly scam people, they will still find a way to rationalize it. And this next part is pretty dark. But for a moment, we're going to have to go back for a second to the PGL Major Tournament and talk about the thing I was originally offered a bounty to investigate. A specific casino that is owned by the same group as CSGO Roll, but this one is called Hype Drop. It's owned by Monarch's arch nemesis. Hype Drop was a casino where instead of gambling Counter-Strike skins, you could gamble real-world items, like real-world loot boxes. For example, you could pay for a real loot box that would get you anything from like a $10 gift card to a Lamborghini, for example. It's just gambling with physical items. But the real secret sauce of this website was a loyalty program called the Daily Cases, where the more you spent, the higher level you got, the more you'd get these daily cases, which essentially were free money. Every single day, you could go on their website and open these daily cases, and theoretically, you'd get free stuff, free money. Which, if that sounds unsustainable, it is. It was all part of a scheme, it turns out, to make the Danish government believe that Hype Drop was not actually gambling. I received a letter Hype Drop gave to the Danish regulator, arguing players could not lose money on their site because over time, the daily cases paid back all the losses over roughly 3 years. This is one of those loopholes we talked about where they're going to argue they're not actually gambling because you can't lose. Now, of course, I asked Hype Drop about this, and initially they denied ever sending this letter. Eventually, I showed them that I had their document, and they finally confessed, saying they did do it on one occasion, but denied trying to pass it off as an investment. They then quickly scurry away, saying, this is our last comment. I bet it is, because they got caught making bad faith arguments to the Danish government.
Jar.
This type of loophole is why in their promotional material, Hype Drop said things like, yes, you'll always make at least your money back, and, quote, we offer return on what you invest through our daily reward system, and, quote, it's a win-win situation every time. Now, it only takes a few moments to realize that offering jackpots and money back to losers isn't gonna work. It has to be a scam, which is why many people like Monarch call.
I bet you could make it work if you had enough people investing. And if you make your money back over like a like a 3-year period. So if people invested and slowly they could quote unquote like break even, but during that time, if you had enough people to sustain and put that in a bank account and could live off the interest, that could be like a pretty lucrative thing.
Called this thing an unsustainable Ponzi scheme, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's right. On March 27th, 2024, Killian, the owner, announced that he was shutting down the site, effectively rug pulling his customers, who were all relying on these daily cases to make their losses back. This is part of what Monarch's paid goons were yelling about at the PGL majors. By removing their daily cases, Hype Drop, in my opinion, stole from their users and effectively revealed their legal loophole to be a lie. Now, with that all understood, let's circle back to this guy, Juicy, a gambling streamer who we heard from earlier. He was easily one of the biggest promoters of Hype Drop, and I wanted to know, given that he has widely promoted a scam, what was he gonna do to make things right? So let's talk about Hype Drop at this point. This has been kind of what precipitated the PGL majors, according to Monarch. He says, I had to protest Hype Drop. It was a Ponzi scheme that collapsed, and CSGO rolls next. Now, when I was looking up Hype Drop, you were one of the people who was promoting it, like one of the bigger YouTubers I saw, maybe the biggest. What's your take on promoting this stuff? Where's your ethical line for what you will take, what you won't take on.
Yeah. So to my understanding, I had never worked with a gambling site that had rewards that function like a Ponzi scheme, you know? So when I was playing on it, I'm not promoting the rewards, you know? I'm not like, this is the most rewarding IRL gambling site. So I was just playing with the product itself and, you know, making content around that. So obviously it's really annoying and bullshit when the rewards get, first off, cut down, and then second off, now there is no reward offering and the site's going away. Like, I'm obviously very upset, not just for my own intent, but also mainly for the people who, especially if people put money into Hype Drop, thinking of it like a good monetary investment versus like, I'm just gambling, you know? I'm pretty sure from my understanding, that wasn't like a advertised thing. At least they weren't advertising. They weren't saying, hey, you got to tell them about this great investment option. I think that was more of a legal loophole that they were, you know, trying to operate.
He's just lying about some of this. He says he didn't advertise his daily cases, but I think he didn't think I'd watch his videos because he definitely did.
Daily reminder, claim your daily cases. They're free monies. Code JUICY will get you 3 free cases, so might as well. I mean, my daily cases used to pay a filthy amount of money. It was a full-time income just claiming them. Claim this every day, dude, and we're making a full-time salary every month.
Yeah, he calls the daily cases basically a full-time salary. But I thought surely after seeing that Hype Drop scammed people, he would cancel his sponsorship with the same company. Like, it's the sister casino CSGO Roll, right? He has to stop that now that he's scammed his audience. He didn't cancel it, right? So let me ask you, does that mean you're no longer going to work with CSGO Roll since they're run by the same people?
Well, I've already promoted the site, and I already have fans who use the site. And I don't think the reward offering there is going to change. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that they did that.
It's unfortunate, but I'm going to still keep doing it.
No one thought Hype Drop was going to rug people from these cases, these daily rewards. And if you are regretful, wouldn't that turn into some kind of action on your part to like change who you're working with?
Yeah, I understand that completely. But I feel like Counter-Strike sites aren't there to stay forever in the first place. I don't think anyone's expecting them to stay forever.
He doesn't
really
give a shit.
Isn't many great options. So yeah, maybe it's f***ed up of me that I continue to do so. Absolutely. But it really is one of the better options on the market right now. And there's a ton of dog shit on the market. So yeah.
And there it is. Absolutely. Yeah. He doesn't want to change. Absolutely, he's not going to stop what he's doing. At the end of the day, past all the rationalizations, that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter what you show them, what you prove to them. They're making too much money. And that is the part that I was struggling to like really get from these people is they would always say like, I do it for the love of gambling, man. I would do it if nobody paid me. Of course, they always do it getting paid. But this is the single biggest cope of gambling streamers. In fact, even Grim told me this, who we spoke to earlier about getting harassed. Luckily for me, though, his tax records are public, so I knew that he was actually making a few $1 million a year and had a few million reasons to lie about why he was doing what he did. So I decided to ask him if maybe the money did play a role. Somebody reached out to me. They said, hey, I found Grim's business. He made $5 million last year. Is that true? And does that undermine what you said about it's not about the money?
Yeah, no, that is true. That's like what's one of the, I guess, the downsides with Norway is everything's public. If they know my company name, even just my name, they Google around, they find it. So like everything that I make is public. And yeah, you could say that the argument is obviously hypocritical because like I made a lot of money, but like I don't do it because I make a lot of money. I'd still do it if I didn't make a lot of money. And like even if I wasn't paid, I would still do it when I had excess money to do it because I like doing it. And it might like sound like a lie, but that's how I started it. And that's how I always wanted to continue.
It sounds like the $5 million might have something to do with it. It just, but that's fine. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I 100% understand what people would think like, oh, no, it's only because of the money. But like, I know myself that it isn't only because of the money, but it's obviously great. Don't get me wrong.
How much did you make this year?
I'd rather not say, but I could say it's a lot.
Come on, Juicy, tell us. Tell us. Look,
So I actually don't know the exact answer myself, but I can tell you it's going to be right around Grimm's number, which I know he told you already.
Grimm's 5 million.
Yeah, and then I got to pay a stupid tax rate on that.
Oh, I got to pay taxes
around there.
Both made about $5 million last year. So it's kind of obvious why they're not going to stop based on just a moral argument. And I began to wonder, like, how many of these influencers take these deals because they are so profitable? Well, luckily, thanks to the hard work of Jeff, who we mentioned earlier, whose documentary you should definitely go watch, I found out it's almost everyone.
This is the top 300 CSGO streamers since the beginning of this year, ranked by watch time. Of 300, 226 are currently sponsored by at least one of them. Some have up to 5. We are looking at 75%.
75%. It's insane. Counter-Strike gambling is basically funding over half of the scene with these ridiculous paychecks. And I began to wonder, not about the people who said yes, but the people who said no. They're the minority. I wanted to know, for the people who said no, how much were they offered, and why didn't they take it?
This is something I think about a lot, because there have even been moments in time where I've been offered $300,000 for a month of gambling. $5,000 an hour. That could change my life. That could retire my mom. That could...
$5,000 an hour. 1 hour is more than I'd make in a month. That is ridiculous.
Alter my family's lineage, but I keep turning it down. That was when I was an even smaller streamer than now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is like how to change this, you know, what does even change look like, right? That's part of what I'm thinking about. It's like, what does even change look like for this industry? And one thing that I came to is like, the incentives have to change because they're so out of whack. The second you allow gambling sponsorships and streamers to like get sponsorship deals, how are you going to stop someone from taking that amount of money? Yep. You're a good person, so you just don't want to do it. That's your personal line. But I think it's hard for just even somebody who's a good person to say no. You know, it's only because you know what it would do to people. But that is such a crazy amount of money. You know, this interview almost ruined me on this story. I began to wonder if change was even possible when money like this is in the field for play. Like, the casinos aren't going to regulate themselves because they lose customers, and there's so much money at stake. Most influencers aren't going to say no because there's so much money at stake, and they could change their life and their family's lives by taking these deals. The more I looked into it, you can't expect all the people to be immune from this influence all at the same time, which is the only way to make change. It wasn't just the influencers or casinos either. Even esports, the most professional, supposedly, side of the game, was flooded with gambling. Almost every professional team had a gambling sponsor.
They got the money.
For example, FaZe's Rollbit, the PGL Major was sponsored by 1xBet. G2 was sponsored by CSGO Roll. And this creates the same problem that it created with the influencers. If a sponsor is offering you buckets of money, it becomes really hard not to take, because if you don't take it, your competitor will. In fact, one esports owner argued the entire ecosystem in Counter-Strike, especially in the lower leagues, is basically funded by the gambling industry and gambling addicts. So I called him to understand more of how this works. Can you walk me through how gambling functions in the esports economy?
The issue is that, or the issue, I guess, at hand that you're talking about is that this activity is enabled by more controversial sponsors in gambling and skin rolling sites. If those sponsors weren't permitted, then the tier 2 and beyond scene in CS specifically would likely wither or die, or at the very least constrict to a very large degree. So that's what I meant by my tweet that you should thank your local betting crackhead in Twitch chat. If you're a fan of tier 2 CS and beyond, then the reason you're watching that team play is probably because of that better.
Somebody's ruining their life.
This is also true of a lot of orgs' profitability. So the value that traditional sponsors bring in for a tier 2 org, even more, you know, we've G2 and Rollbit, for example, the value that a traditional sponsor brings in versus a Gamba sponsor is like 15 or 20% of the value. So you don't really turn that down as an org owner unless you've got very specific moral qualms or disagree with gambling on a personal level.
But does this inflate the economy where if you're not taking a gambling sponsorship, you're almost at a disadvantage because your economics and what you're able to play players and attract talent is much less than somebody who, for example, has a gambling deal and is making way more money than you?
Yeah, to a degree, that's true, I think. Very, very few organizations are able to do it without Gamba. Largely, if you don't have Gamba, you're almost certainly going to be unprofitable.
You heard it there.
Yep.
You almost can't compete at the highest level without a gambling sponsor because they pay so much more than everyone else. And if everyone else is doing it, they will have more money to spend on a team than you and get better players and therefore likely beat you. There's just no more profitable sponsor to turn to. And so a lot of people actually take the money. So even if that sponsor is a site that allows minors to play with no ID, who cares? Just slap an 18+ sticker in your ad for them and get plausible deniability.
Yep.
That's what G2 did when announcing their CSGO role
That's what I
sponsorship.
said.
A depressing fact about this video is the star of it, a guy named Monesi, turned 18 only days before they announced the sponsorship, which means in the video, it was filmed when he was
Underage.
17. He was underage in their casino, supposedly 18+, and no one cared. A perfect metaphor for this entire industry. It's all optics.
Yep.
I have to tell you, by the way, the exact day I announced I was investigating Counter-Strike gambling, CSGO Roll did announce for the first time that they were going to be asking all users to prove that they're 18 before playing. Whether or not it's coincidence, they announced it same day. I don't know. Take it for what it is. Maybe it's a token gesture. They'll roll back. Or maybe it's a sudden change of heart for the youth. I don't know. Either way, the point I'm making is that for many people and professional teams, the choice to take a gambling sponsorship is like the choice for PEDs in the Olympics or steroids in the WWE. You can say no, but if everyone else is using them and getting ahead, you choosing not to for ethical reasons will get you left behind, and your peers will become more successful than you. It's a depressing cycle that has me flashing back to the CSGO Wild days several years ago and realizing we're right where we started. CSGO Wild in 2016 was a gambling website secretly owned, slightly disputed, by FaZe Clan. And according to FaZe Bank, his motivation to do that was pretty simple.
My motivation for doing it actually was at the time we weren't making enough money to buy a CSGO team. All in, the venture was going to cost us like $1 million, and we definitely did not have anything close to that. So my brain, we got to finesse it. We got to figure out how to make the money to buy this team now, because in the next 6 months, year, this team's gonna be worth like $4 or $5 million, and we're not gonna be able to get into this game,
Why didn't they like rob a store or something?
Game.
Yeah, when you hear it, it sounds crazy. It sounds like a cope, but his plan actually worked. FaZe got away with it. FaZe Clan has a Counter-Strike team that won second place in the infamous PGL Major all these years after CSGO Wild. It's alive and well, and still funded, by the way, by gambling, just by a different gambling website. Now it's Rollbit. It's reportedly a multi-million-dollar deal. Now look, I know seeing this is all very depressing, but we've actually learned some really valuable things. Firstly, we can't fix this at the individual level of influencers, esports teams, or even casinos. Doxing people, harassing them doesn't fix it or the underlying problems. It's a deep systemic problem of incentives. Of course, acknowledging that also doesn't absolve individuals. I wouldn't dare say it's okay for Juicy to do what he does, where people have been scammed and he continues to work with the same parent company. That said, if he stopped, it wouldn't change things suddenly. Someone would take his place. So if we're serious about trying to solve this problem, we have to look farther up the food chain than influencers, even than casinos, even than esports leagues. We have to zoom out and see the root cause.
Here's the thing, though. It'll never happen. It's
Valve definitely does have an underage gambling problem.
Valve can't solve it. The casinos can't solve it. You're dealing with like an international web for lack of a better word, of this. How are your laws going to connect? Like, I mean, the only way to do it's like go up international law or something. Like, it's never fucking gonna happen. We can't even make it happen for shit that matters.
We really don't have an incentive to stop it.
Underage, middle age, overage, however you want to slice it.
I think they have all the responsibility. I mean, you could pass me some of that.
That's nobody.
If you want, but ultimately they're the kingpin, reaping in all of the money, or majority of the money, and there's a reason why they haven't killed it yet. They've possessed the power for all these years, but they allow.
This is going in like, oh, McDonald's made me fat. Oh, they didn't. You did, and it's fine. Just admit it. Like, don't. It's not my problem that I do it. It's McDonald's problem that I eat their food, but I don't have to. But it's their problem.
Allow it to go, and I feel like they do the bare minimum crackdown to allow it to keep operating.
And I don't even think the idea of it and the result of it is bullshit. Just admit it. We're all terrible people. Leveling up should not be seen as an investment. Daily frees are prone to exchange at all times. This is good. It's never gonna change, but it's pretty good. Let's play a few Marvel Rivals. Instrumental. These are usually pretty safe. What's up? It's vacation time. Don't work tomorrow. I gotta kill more sharks. That's what we're doing. I don't even care if I win. I can kill that stupid fucking land shark. Where's Wanda? There she is. Trying to get better with Moon Knight. Alexa, stop. How did she... What is happening? Okay. Whoa, what is playing? Alexa, stop. Something is playing in my fucking ears. What the fuck is playing in my headphones.
By now, you've probably heard about Honey. You know, the browser extension that saves you money.
Do you have Honey installed?
What's Honey?
Oh, no.
Honey?
Honey is a free
browser extension.
Free browser extension.
Free browser extension.
Free browser extension.
That automatically applies coupon codes when you check out on.
Okay.
I've watched entire reality.
Oh, it's that.
I won't let that happen again.
The fuck? When did that? Okay, whatever. Alright. Let's go. I don't know why that started playing.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Button down my team.
You need to stop that vehicle in its tracks.
The universe doesn't care about anything. Time is a tough one. We still don't know. There's a bunch of good, like, Brian Green videos out there. But, like, time is all relative depending on, like, how quickly you're going. Like, general theory of relativity. I generally wouldn't use the term care about anything. That implies like a why, and physicists answer questions with how and not why. So, I mean, that's some shit that keeps me up at night because, and I was talking to this with, I'm a director of a planetarium here in Texas, and my assistant, I guess, I was talking to her about that kind of thing, and you know, it's tough. Nobody has the answer to that. I can just tell you what I think. Hold on a second. Like, because a photon doesn't like experience time, and like it's weird to try and conceptualize that because the photon is created and destroyed in the same instant. So it's hard to conceptualize an idea of like, okay, we can see the cosmic microwave background radiation, and those photons, although they're microwave range, but they, since we can see it, they have been emitted. Like, it not at the Big Bang, but like shortly thereafter, something like 320,000 years around recombination time, I think. I could be wrong, just off the top of my head. But like, when that happened, electron falls down to ground state, releases a photon. In the instance, that photon, according to itself, immediately dies. But there have been, like, to us, 13.8 or whatever it is billion years. That is a weird thing to try and, like, reason with in your head. Like 13.8 billion years, if you look up there, or you get a detector and you see that photon experienced none of that, but we experience the time in that instantaneous moment that that photon was created and destroyed. Hold on, I think I can maybe alleviate some of that. Time is a dimension, but it feels like only it has an influence on us does because our amount of it is finite, but matter doesn't have that issue. Actually, matter is the only thing that has that issue. Non-matter does not have that issue. Matter is the only thing that is affected by time, whereas photon does not have matter. It has an equivalent mass, but it in of itself is just wave in the electromagnetic or in the like electric and magnetic quantum fields. So it's actually the fact that things do have matter gives us that experience of time. if you were to plot like time on the y-axis and matter on and space on the x-axis, and you would create like a vector that if you were to plot it, like photons would have no time. They would be completely horizontal. And then, depending on how much matter you had, you would raise that vector in the y direction to experience time. So it's like a little bit of that is going into a little bit of that time factor is coming from your like spatial matter axis. And when I say the x-axis, I mean like if the three-dimensional space, if that was all like crammed into the x-axis. I know it's a weird thing. I think it's a pretty good way of describing it, though. I actually learned that very recently myself. Correct. Correct, yes. 100%. Because like, as you go nearer to the speed of time, or I mean the speed of light, time slows down. It's like time dilation, and then you have a length contraction and mass dilation, which is actually kind of, people call it mass dilation, like you gain more mass, but that's not technically true. It's momentum, and momentum is like mass times velocity, and it's I don't even know if I could explain that like a good answer. Like momentum is this different thing than just mass, because like if you see and here's another thing too, sorry, it's gonna, you got me talking now. The reason we can't go faster than the speed of light, actually there is no reason. You can go faster than the speed of light. What it's more correct to say is that you cannot accelerate fast up to or faster than the speed of light, which is why if you watch sci-fi or in Marvel comics or whatever, you hear like chronotons or something, or things that go faster than the speed of light. Those can exist. They just have to already exist doing that. And in fact, those cannot slow down to the speed of light. And it's due to special relativity, because as you go faster, you get time dilation, and then you also get that mass dilation that I was talking about. But that's the big one, because to accelerate matter or mass, you have to put in more energy to do that. And the more energy you put into it, the more mass you have, quote unquote, the more mass. So the more energy, and it actually turns out you need infinite energy to accelerate to the speed of light. That's why that can't happen. Or at least that's one of the reasons. It's the one that makes the most sense to me, personally. Boom! That's a quadruple kill. I haven't gotten one of those in a while. But quarks do not, I believe. Yeah, quarks I think are really interesting, because and this is kind of not, this is about quarks, not necessarily a question, but I just like to point it out to people because I think it's so cool. Because you know how like you have positive and negative, like magnets, electricity, all of that, you know, protons are positive, electrons are negative, that kind of thing. Okay, I thought that guy's, okay. Anyway, there's a thing called quark color charge. It actually has nothing to do with color. But I used to like try and figure out like, okay, you have a positive and negative, but what if there were like a 3 system of it? Like positive and negative is like a 2 system, right? Like you have a plus and a minus. But I was thinking, what if there was some kind of 3 based system on that? And there is. It's called quark color charge, where like quarks can't be apart they always have to even each other out. They call them like red, green, and blue quarks, which is kind of like your positive and negative. But to be fair, that's only for like, what do they call them? Baryons, like protons, like heavy stuff. They can appear in twos, but my knowledge on that, it's been a while since I've taken nuclear. But I always thought that was cool. Yeah, so the time thing is all about movement and how quickly you're moving. And if you have mass or not. The real interesting thing is neutrinos. Because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and I very well might be, but as I understand it, I graduated in 2012. Grad school, I mean. Neutrinos we don't know if they actually have mass. And that's like a big thing, because it's how we detect supernova explosions, because whenever a supernova bounces back out, you know, you get to iron, and then the core collapses, and then a bunch of like neutrinos are made, and those neutrinos don't interact with hardly anything, and they kind of get the fast pass, as it were, and get out of the nuclear explosion like pretty quickly, and they go nearly the speed of light. So I think that's interesting. I don't know if we know that they do go the speed of light. I don't think they do. But we will detect like a bunch of neutrinos in these, like, they're called like Kamiokande and Super Kamiokande, like giant water pools, because they like interact with chlorine or something. And then yeah, so they're like time perception is like really weird. Did they? I'll have to look at that. I haven't really checked that lately. Because I know, like, PBS Space Time with Matt Dowd, he put forth that we don't really know what the electron mass is, like, actually is. There's, like, a range it could be. So, like, there's a lot of talk about, like, electron mass lately, which I actually thought, I was always taught that we did. You know, we know like, what an electron volt is, and then you can kind of measure the mass from that. But that's just, like, a classical way of looking at it, not necessarily, like, a quantum way, which works pretty much for anything that we need it to work for, but it's not, like, technically the mass of that. So I'll have to look that up, yeah, for sure. Yeah, neutrinos are made by particle decay of, like, the W boson or something. Like, when that happens, like a proton decays into an electron, a neutron, and then there's a neutrino that's shot out.
I tear through the cloudless night, just like the moon.
But yeah, your time question is something I actually think about quite a bit. It's very weird to me that like, yeah, the thing about that, right, is like electrons are waves until you observe them, and observing them doesn't necessarily mean looking at them. It's just, to know where they are, you have to have a detector, and that will cause, like, you need to hit it with a photon to know, like, where it is, to collapse the wave function into, like, a definite quote unquote definite like position because the Schrodinger's uncertainty principle and all that. Yeah, it's weird. It's super weird. Like the quantum stuff. I'm great. I should have been a quantum physicist, but I was already like deep into research. Like my thesis was on exoplanets. I've done some other research as well, like Type 1a supernovas with like galactic distances and stuff like that. But I love quantum mechanics, and thankfully, you know, I get to talk about all of that, especially I just got this planetarium director position, and like it's so cool to just teach people about stuff. The time is the thing that baffles me the most about space. Yeah. I would go and I would go and, well, let's see. I mean, it is baffling, right? Like, you're as baffled as anyone. Richard Feynman, you know, he's like, oh, because that comes into, like, quantum mechanics and everything, like going the speed of light. You know, if anyone says that they understand quantum mechanics, they don't understand quantum mechanics. It's one of his favorite, or his most recognized lines. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's weird, right? Because the deeper I got into all of that, like when you get into nuclear physics, and I commented on this, I was like, this is like 5th grade math. I mean, you're adding fractions and stuff. But it is a lot for sure. But I wouldn't say that, like, if you're interested in it, I'm gonna be honest, you probably know just about as much as anyone else does. I love the math. I love getting into math. There's like, I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky. I derive like the Friedman equation of like the expansion of the universe. I love that shit. I love talking math, but just like in a general sense, it's always good to be able to like try and explain it to people that don't know it. And it's not. It shouldn't be viewed as like a barrier, I don't think. Unless you're like asserting something, you're like, well, this. I think the Earth is flat because of this. You know, where's your math? And then nobody knows how to do its integral or anything. So it can be tough. But you being confused on the time thing, everyone is confused on the time thing. Because to me, I can actually go a little deeper into what I was talking about with the photon being released at the beginning of the universe type of thing.
Seriously, how many gods are there?
The hold on. I hate him so much. Okay, done. So, I hate Iron Fist. If a photon experiences no time and it gets created and instantly destroyed, let's say the photon lands on somebody's, like, I don't know why my mind goes here, but like if somebody's sunbathing on the beach and like the photon that was created at the beginning of the universe or near it lands on like someone's back or their ass cheek or something, that back or ass cheek was not created when the photon was created, because our Earth was, 4.5 billion years old. So like that photon doesn't experience any time in between. It's created and destroyed, or absorbed, whatever. Destroyed. But like we weren't there to absorb it when it was created, which was 13 and 13.5 billion years, 13.8 billion years ago. I don't even know how to like rectify that in my mind. That's like something I like that keeps me up at night. It's very weird. It's very weird to explain. I'm like, if it instantly comes into and out of existence, and we didn't exist whenever it came into existence, then how does it instantly go out of existence or gets absorbed? I should say that. It's a weird thing. And then I'm thinking, like, our time, our 13.8 billion years is, like, within that instantaneous time frame of that photon? That is so... it's crazy. Well, see, it's hard for anyone to do it, and that's why Einstein got his Nobel Prize. A lot of people think it's E equals MC squared and all of that. No, it was the photoelectric effect, because everyone thought it was waves, and rightly so. It is waves because it interferes with itself. But also, photons have definite energies based on their frequency. So it's like, okay, well, it depends on how you want to test it. Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, double slit experiment is still mind baffling. No, not the shark.
Keep going.
And then I had a thought. What was my thought the other day? There was something about, like, equivalent photon mass. Because the thing that gives mass is the quantum fields interacting with, like, the Higgs field. And the photon, like, the electromagnetic field does not interact with that. Because you have, like, all of these fields that are associated with different particles that interact with each other. It's like a quantum field dynamics, I think is what that study is called, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't know a lot of that. That's like super specialized quantum stuff. But yeah, and then like if we know that supersymmetry is a real thing, because I think that's part of what Brian Greene is working on. I know he's like there with the string theory stuff. By the way, a lot of people don't know this, but like if you go on YouTube, well, you are on YouTube because you're watching me, but you can watch MIT lectures for free. Like Leonard Susskind, the guy who came up with like string theory and stuff, you can go watch like all of his MIT stuff for free. Like no signing up or anything. Oh, you have? Okay. Just, yeah. Well, see, that's hard to talk about because you have like the Schrodinger, or not, like the uncertainty principle and everything. Photons, when they're detected, and there's like two schools of thought about how they quote unquote collapse, is you gotta use like the Dirac delta function, and that collapses in the wave into like exactly where it is. Did we win? Oh, cool. Well, oh, we actually won completely. But the more you don't observe the photon, the more that wave packet spreads out over time. And then, like, it could be anywhere until you something hits the particular place that it actually is, and then it collapses down into that function using that Dirac delta function. And that's, yeah, it's weird. Because the big thing is, like, it does spread out. Because you, like, know where it is whenever you detect it, and then, like, it goes back into its waveform kind of thing. Personally, I'm no big physicist, but Texan astrophysicist. I think there's something more that we're starting to get to about that we've only approximated. I have nothing to prove for that. That is like a gut intuition. It's very much not scientific, but the seemingly like contradictory elements of quantum mechanics just makes me think that there's something that somebody's not seeing. And I'm not saying I'm smart enough to tackle it, but let me put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if something more was discovered. Just like whenever we basically solved all of physics and couldn't figure out the black body radiation thing, and then you have all the, you know, Bohr and all of them figuring out, like Schrodinger, about like, oh, well, what if light isn't continuous? Like, energy is not proportional to its amplitude. What if it's little packets of it? And then we solved the black body radiation stuff, and then it opened up that entire field. We thought that was like the last thing to learn in physics. And then it opened up the entire field of quantum mechanics. Yeah, and like that's weird too, like Planck lengths and stuff. That's ridiculous. Because somebody actually they were I talked, or I saw something the other day. I think it was on Spacetime. I love PBS Spacetime because they like actually go deep into the weeds. It's not this like surface level stuff. They were talking about what if light does have a variable speed, because as space like expands, as we know it does, what if like that Planck length, you know, because that gives us like the tiny like voxels, or they call them pixels, but I mean if we're in 3 space, it's like voxels of the universe. If that's expanding, then like the Planck length is the smallest length that has any sort of significance. There's nothing smaller than that. But if that expands, then the lower limit of light kind of isn't what it should be, or what we think to be. It's not constant. That's the word. That was really interesting. That was, I guess it's like a super new theory or idea, I should say, put out there. It's like, oh, that's a good point. I don't know. It's exciting. Exciting times. Where's my... There are nights on here where I'll do just like watch science stuff and talk about it.
Hero.
And again, I don't claim to be an arbiter of everything. I can tell you what I know and what I think of. I went to school and put my entire financial life in debt forever to talk about balls in space. So I might as well make use of it, right?
We are cloak and dagger. We are hope and fear.
But tonight is a Jaeger kind of night. The heat depth could be when... So I also have a theory about
30
this.
seconds before you attack. Get ready.
Yeah, yeah.
The worst part about white costumes.
Um,
Stains. Am I
Yeah, I mean,
don't fight to hurt people. I fight to heal them.
So, my theory actually, I assume since you're into all this, you watch like Futurama and stuff. Independently, I came up with what I think, from what I know about quantum fields and everything, is that at the end of everything, if everything decays, I guess maybe even if not, it really wouldn't matter. But at the end of it all, when there are no like photons to detect energy, if the protons decay into whatever energy they have, I think if all of that all of those waves could superimpose on themselves at some point and then re-bang, for a better word. I'm probably wrong on that, but you can get, you know, like constructive interference, and if like everything is decayed and it's just a black giant void of nothingness, then all of the waves at some point, because no matter how long it takes, if there is like infinite time, it will happen. Like, people don't quite understand that about like what infinity is. If there is even a chance of anything happening, it will happen at some point. And so if all of those fields or whatever constructively interfere with one another, and you get like another big bang, but then you would be like expanding into space and not having space expand. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird to think about. And there was something else that people were talking about. Hold on, I gotta kill Thor here. Okay. Something about dark energy. Who did I watch about that? It was about what else dark energy could be. Damn, I cannot remember that for the life of me. Sorry, yeah. I'm sure it'll come to me in a little while. But
Sorry, you chose the wrong side, Clint. The Punisher is in turret mode.
there is a video. In fact, I could watch it after this. It's still around. I watched the mathematics one, but it's like the top 10 discoveries in 2024, and there's like a physics one, a math one, like all these like different science areas. I think I watched like an engineering one. I don't think I hit the physics one. Yeah, it's weird. Dark energy. It's weird. I think my biggest fascination is like the Great Attractor, which you've probably heard about if you watch all that stuff. You're kind of in that realm. So like we didn't win that one, did we? No. Like everything is like expanding, but like also everything is kind of moving towards one point that's out of our observable sphere of the universe. And some people are like, well, it might be another part of the multiverse or whatever, or something. It's like another universe pulling. Could be something else, but that shit has got to have a lot of mass to pull everything in our universe. That is some crazy stuff. That's what I'm really interested in. That we'll probably never get an answer for.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area.
It's really interesting teaching astronomy, because before I got the planetarium director job, and I guess I will also be a professor again, just whenever they need me. But like before this, that's what I did. I taught astronomy, stars and galaxies and solar system and stuff.
That's a dead.
And they're coming up with like in physics, we haven't discovered anything new in like 400 years, right? In astronomy, things are changing all the time. So it's interesting to keep up with it. The thing that I like misremember now is I was always taught that we're in the Virgo supercluster, but now they're saying like that's not really a thing anymore, and we're in like the Laniakea cluster, like super cluster or whatever. So that's I don't know. That's something interesting. Like it's funny for me because I keep things change fast in astronomy. Got him. Oh, come on, get her! She was so close. Oh, I hate him so much. Kill him, kill him. Oh, we're not like doing terrible. What's up? I bet I know what you're gonna say. Okay, I misread. Well, that's, yeah, man, I stream like every night. Nobody, I've been doing this for like 8 years. It's fine. Nobody comes in here. I mean, I do have regulars. I normally stream on Twitch, but I'm having something happen with that. Nothing bad, but I usually like multi-stream on here and Twitch. I thought you were gonna say you didn't believe, like, because I have a lot of people in here that come in here and they see me and they're like, "You don't know physics, bitch." I put myself in debt for physics, and then I bring out my thesis and start talking about it, and they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And it's usually a bunch of trolls. Which is fine. Again, I don't claim to know everything. I know what I know, and I can tell you why I arrive at the things that I know. See, I mean, you've made it, man. You're at that level. The one thing that I've known, the biggest revelation, is that the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know anything. You're at the further end of the, what is it, the Dunning-Kruger effect? Which is like, people know just a little bit, and they think that they know everything about everything. It's like people go on to WebMD and put in a cough, and then now they suddenly know more than all the doctors ever, kind of thing. I learned that whenever I got into Cal 3 and then differential equations. It's like, I don't know any. I thought I knew all of the things. I know none of the things. Whereas, and this happened one time, I am so glad that college got shut down. College. I taught, right when I got out of college, I taught at ITT Tech for 1 semester and then never again. It was so like antithetical to what I believed in about like education and stuff. And then they called their students customers, and like you basically had to give them A's because they were paying, like it was so bad. 1 semester and I was done. Because what they did was they were, if you don't know, they were a for-profit college, and there was a bill that got passed that overturned all of the FAFSA, like the financial student aid thing. The FAFSA money could not go to those colleges, and I wasn't there at that time. Well, that's good. That's absolutely good. Yeah, there's always something. I wasn't there at that time. It was after, like, I didn't go back, but that bill got passed, and they the very next day, because I knew somebody that worked there, the very next day, and I think this was like nationwide, he went up there, and there was just like a white piece of paper saying like everyone was fired. They were shut down. They didn't even try to fight it, because that's where all of their money came from. Yeah, customers is insane. Yeah, I'll go play that top 10 thing. I felt like dirty working there. The reason I brought that up in the first place was like there was some guy that I don't even know like a nice way of saying it, but he probably shouldn't have been college material, and that's probably why I was going to ITT. But afterwards, because I was explaining, I don't remember, I was teaching just like regular physics, and I was explaining something. It may have been like a Doppler effect, or I don't remember what I was explaining. Point is, it was something like space-like, because like if I'm going to teach physics, and astronomy is physics, usually like when I teach astronomy, they'll hand me like 1 physics class. Not anymore though, thankfully. But he was telling me how he knew all about space because he was like a moderator he was a moderator on like a Gundam Wing board, like forum on the internet. And he was telling me like, I swear to God, he was telling me like how I was wrong about a few things, because he knew Gundam Wing, and that was different. He was and man, I am like the most least confrontative person ever, so I didn't know how to handle that situation. It's like, dude, I got the math, like we learned it, like. But I guess this guy was like so entrenched in this culture, and I love superhero shit. I love sci-fi stuff, and like I think those like bounds of reality broke for him or something. It was a thing. It was a thing. It was something. Wait, here. Okay. Let me see if I can't find that video. It's just like, am I being schooled by like a kid that like just got out of high school? Like, what is happening here? Top physics discoveries 2024. This particular video, I forgot if I had saved it. I think it was this one. Oh, yeah. I actually guess I did watch some of this. It's fine. I probably wasn't paying attention. Oh, let me turn it up.
It dominates the universe, making up 68% of its contents and pushing matter apart with its repulsive force.
We often say dark energy because cosmologists are kind of in the dark. We really don't know what it is.
About 100 years ago, Einstein added a variable to his equations of general relativity to represent the energy infused in space itself. He called it lambda, or the cosmological constant. In 1998, teams led by Adam Rees, Saul Perlmutter, and Brian Schmidt confirmed the presence of dark energy, winning them a Nobel Prize in 2011. The discovery matched Einstein's hypothesis about an accelerating universe and a cosmological constant. But in April 2024, data from a new telescope instrument produced the biggest map of the cosmos yet. The results throw the cosmological constant into question, suggesting that dark energy might be changing.
That would not be what a cosmological constant would have been predicting.
This opens the floodgates for new theories.
The constant is a name for that particular term. You could easily assign like some kind of changing time variant for it. I think it's a misnomer to call it like a constant. Just like imaginary numbers are a horrible name for that, like complex numbers.
Understand what the cosmological constant is. We have to sort of start at the beginning, which is the Big Bang. There's this initial kick of energy and the universe starts expanding outwards. The dominant force is, generally speaking, gravity. We would expect that because it's filled with matter and dark matter, the universe would eventually slow down because of this attractive force due to gravity.
But, see, I have issues with that. I have issues because, like, I get it. Big Bang. Yeah, that's my issue. Thank you. What is the energy that did it? And some people that say it's like, oh, Ryan, what are you doing? You coming to say hi? Some people, like string theorists and other people, say like the Big Bang is like a rubbing of like membranes of other galaxies or other universes or something. So it's like, okay. But they never, like, nobody ever starts with that. Well, the cosmic microwave background radiation is the energy that was there, and after the universe had spread out enough that, because, you know, it's pressure and temperature, and the universe is so big, and as it's expanding, that initial energy, whatever it was from, as the volume expands, the temperature goes down, and at that particular point, all of the like plasma, which is like free electrons and protons, that temperature allowed the electrons to be captured by protons, and then they fall into their base energy level. And as they fall into that base energy level, because it's cool enough, the energy that's released from that is like the thing that gives us the cosmic microwave background radiation. It's not technically from the Big Bang itself, because we can actually see beyond that that cosmological microwave background radiation from actually acoustics of all things. There's waves in that energy that we can detect, and I'm like a big music guy too, so that's like a really interesting thing for me. Like, if I wasn't a physicist, I'd be a musician. I've saxophones everywhere and everything. Anyway, so I really like that acoustic. I thought that was neat whenever that was introduced that, oh shit, okay, we can kind of find the ripples of what happened. But going back to it is like, the dark energy is like, oh, it's energy from somewhere else. But like, to me, it's like, okay, well, shouldn't that be like the thing that supplied the energy in the first place to the Big Bang to get that going? And it's really weird that the Big Bang also is, like, if you look at it and think about it like a singularity that spawns our universe, is effectively exactly like a black hole. Like, that's my personal leaning, is that some sort of black hole formed, and then, like, we came out of it. It's like the what is it, parent-daughter universe idea that's been put forth. That, to me, seems the most logical. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Let's get going.
But not only is it not slowing down, it's accelerating.
Yeah. Universe
That's
is
akin
accelerating,
to
right?
me on Earth throwing up a tennis ball, expecting it to come back down due to gravity, and it doesn't. It keeps going up.
You're right. You're right. That's a big issue, because you are correct in saying that just kicks the can down the road, and it's not a very satisfying answer, because I don't think that, if that is the case, I don't think that we could ever know, unless somehow we figured out how to do that ourselves, were it possible. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. It's the same issue I have with people, because I'm a huge Origin of Life. I love watching that kind of stuff. I think it's fascinating. I am far too stupid to become a biologist and study that. It's so complex, but I am not. I actually give talks at, like, local colleges and stuff about Origin of Life. I've made my own thing about it, kind of for like a general audience, put aliens in there and stuff, like search for extraterrestrial intelligence and all of that. And abiogenesis is, like, incredibly interesting to me. And I do not like the, what is it called, panspermia theory, where, like, life arrived from a comet, because that doesn't answer anything. That's the most unsatisfying answer to the question of how life arose on Earth. Yeah, I hate that answer, because it's not an answer. It's kicking the can down the road. Okay, well, they got on the comet somehow. Well, where'd that come from? You know? Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
and it's accelerating upwards.
The simplest explanation for this acceleration is Einstein's cosmological constant, an unchanging dark energy that permeates empty space.
But even then, like I said, constant, I really don't like that word, because even like Hubble's constant, it's like 72 kilometers per second per megaparsec, something like that. That has been shown to change. Like, that is just the current expansion of the universe. It's like, okay, you have a galaxy going 72 kilometers per second at this particular distance. If you go twice that distance, it doubles. That's effectively what it's saying. Like, in the beginning, or like in the earlier part of the universe, it was going much faster, and then it doesn't necessarily have to be that number the entire time, but they still call it that, which is super weird. Astronomy has this big thing of not wanting to change names based on like historical precedent. It's really annoying. Well, see, that's the thing, right? So if you're going to get something, and this actually, just roll with me here, it actually does follow along lines of logic. If you're going to like send something into space, you have to give that thing an escape velocity, and you can find that fairly simple. So if you give something more energy, that'll get it to that escape velocity, and you have no way of slowing it down, then it will escape from Earth. Let's say, I think Earth is something like 12 something kilometers per second. So it's like a finite number, right? 11.2, I was close. But you have a finite amount of energy, and if you give it that energy to accelerate it to that, it will never come back down again. The blast itself spread on. We'll say that's the thing, is the three ends of the universe is either, you know, your big crunch, your heat death, or then you have the big rip, right? And the Big Bang started with a finite amount of energy. That energy, and you're right, there's a finite amount of gravity. See, that's a hard thing too, because we don't know if the universe is infinite or not in space. We know it's not infinite in time. It cannot be. But we don't know that it's not infinite in space. So we don't know how much stuff is out there. And the only way that we assume something is like, we call it, what is it? Homogeneity, where like everything is kind of made up of the same stuff everywhere. It's isotropic, which is like it looks the same in every direction. And there's another one, I can't for the life of remember what it's called. But like if you take a big enough chunk out of like a, I don't know how big of a chunk they have, but that general density is kind of what we play with. We don't ever talk about like mass. We talk about density, mass per unit volume, and we assume that that density is pretty much like uniform everywhere, especially in the early universe. But as the universe spreads out, it clumps up into like strands that kind of look like bubbles and everything due to like dark matter and gravity and all of that. So the point is, with my like escape velocity, is if there's enough energy, that thing will never come back down to Earth. What will happen is the gravity will slow it down arbitrarily slow to zero, because it only has a finite amount of energy, but it never will fall back down. And there is an escape velocity of the universe, which is quite near light speed. So depending on how much energy initially there was, it's either going to go explode. I don't like using that term explode, but Big Bang will happen. And then if the energy is less than a particular amount, it will come down and crash and do the big crunch and blah, blah, blah. If it's more, it will slow down arbitrarily slow to at an arbitrarily long amount of time. Yeah, expand, yeah. Explode implies like something is exploding into something, like, but it's space expanding. Because like things seem to move superluminally faster than light, but that's not true. The things aren't doing that. It's space expanding faster than the speed of light. And it's not actually that. It's not that space expands faster. It's that there is more space that expands. And like the more space you have, like let's say if one little cube of space expands like at 1 meter a second, those aren't real numbers. I'm just giving an, example. But like if there's a lot of space, so you have a lot of cubic meters and each one of those expands 1 meters per second, you can see like If you have a galaxy way far away, that thing's going to be zooming. It's not because that galaxy is moving through space. Space is carrying it along with it like a riptide, for lack of a better word. Anyway, so Big Bang happens. There's enough energy there. Everything starts expanding, comes back. If the total energy of gravity is more than the total energy of the Big Bang, we don't think that that's possible. If the energy is more than the Big Bang, the universe will never recollapse, but it will slow down given long enough time. If you go however long into the future, it will approach zero asymptotically. Yeah, hold on. And then the thing with the dark energy, if dark energy is being fed into our universe, that is feeding the expansion, so they say. And then you get the giant the rip where everything is accelerating, and as time goes on, everything will accelerate more. And at some point, because now like gravity is much stronger than that like expansion of space, but there's going to be a point if space starts expanding more and more, like so much more quickly, then gravity will be overtaken by that. Then the galaxies, the stars in the galaxies themselves will start expanding, and then you go down into star systems, like we'll be long gone, but like the Earth and the Sun, all of that would expand away, and then you go down even further, and it's like the molecules will start expanding because space is just basically running away from itself. It's expanding so fast that the electromagnetic interactions can't work, and then even more so, you get atoms ripping apart, and then protons, like the little space that the quarks are in, are expanding so fast that they get ripped apart. It's a big rip. It's probably not the most pleasant thing. Hold on. I think if the matter in the universe was condensed to a single point, gravity wouldn't be there. So then space is yeah, well, that's the big thing, right? Like your question right there is exactly what everyone's been working on, right? Quantum gravity. We have no idea how gravity works in like a singularity kind of environment. So it's that question is that's the question, right? That's the one. But if you spread mass out far enough, would it not affect expansion? No. Your mass would slow down expansion, but it would never completely stop it and reverse it. Collapsing star. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Is before, what was it, 96 or something? We thought that's pretty much what would happen. Like Big Crunch seems right. Something explodes, there's a bunch of stuff in the universe, it'll effectively come back together. That's the big thing that blew everything up, is that, oh shit, it's not. This because you start looking at type 1a supernovas, which is how we get like far distances to galaxies. Like that's the big thing, because we use them as standard candles, because all type 1a supernovas are the same brightness, and if you have the same brightness, you can compare them. You can get the distance from it. It's like a brightness distance relationship with like it's the inverse square law of light. And those far galaxies out there are not moving like we thought they were. They're moving much quicker. And in fact, they were accelerating away, which is where this is. Where we are now in this video. Once enough matters in one point. Yeah. It's just like all of that is so I'm gonna be honest. Your whatever theory that you have about that is as good as anyone else, because we don't know shit about that. That's the breakthrough of quantum gravity that we're trying to get to.
The universe is expanding. We're essentially getting more and more empty space between galaxies, and consequently more and more dark energy.
I'm a big theory guy.
This hypothesis is the basis of Lambda CDM, cosmologists' current model of the universe.
Physicists and cosmologists are between a rock and a hard place. 95% of the energy and matter in that model we cannot fully explain. There are many physicists who would be very eager to see deviations from the predictions made by that model, which would indicate some new kind of physics that could lead us to insights about dark energy and dark matter.
In 2021, the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument, known as DESI, kicked off a 5-year effort to measure the positions and velocities of 40 million galaxies.
That's a lot.
The goal of DESI is to build the largest 3D map of the universe that we've ever
I am ready.
If you want to measure and understand dark energy, you want to look at the universe at its largest size. DESI has 5,000 optical fibers that allows the instrument to collect 5,000 galaxies at a time.
Dark matter is space.
As DESI's fibers collect light from galaxies, a spectrograph
Dark
splits
matter
the light
affects
into its
space.
individual wavelengths. This reveals how quickly a galaxy is moving away from Earth, which the researchers use to infer its distance. But to measure the expansion rate of the universe, DESI scientists turned to baryon acoustic oscillations,
Hey, it's that thing
or
I talked
BAOs, the leftover imprints of pressure waves from the Big Bang. Each of these...
That is the farthest back we can see. And it's what, like, the amplitudes of those waves will give us a idea of the energy, because like energy is proportional to like the amplitude squared of waves in acoustics anyway.
Unique features is imprinted on the universe like a ripple frozen onto a pond.
And the only thing that changes its size is the expansion of the universe. So with DESI, by
no, it's like a like gravitational waves, not necessarily walls. Imagine an infinite pond with drops of rocks everywhere, those waves.
measuring this 3D map of the universe,
and I don't know how
we can
far
actually
back
see
they
how
can go.
BAO has evolved over time, and
I'm
therefore
not super
impact
familiar with all
of
of
dark
that.
energy on that expansion.
In April 2024, an international collaboration of more than 500 scientists...
Because, like, to me, just with what I know, the further you look back in time, it's actually called the look back time. So I would imagine, because we can do that with, well, no, how... I'm not even going to say anything about that because I don't know enough about that to talk about it. Yeah, I think this is... See, that's so... like, it's so weird to talk about because you have to talk about, like, walls of the universe, talking about, like, is the universe infinite or not? But the only thing that we can see is our, like, cosmological bubble of 13.8 billion years, so it's like a radius of it, which is also weird because we know the universe is like 150 billion light years wide or something like that. Maybe not that much, maybe it's like 130 or something. I don't remember. It's a large number, but it's like, okay, well, how can it be that big if we can only see 13.8? But the thing is, yeah, but we can... those galaxies, as their light is coming to hit us, they have been moving in that time. So the universe is much bigger than what we see. We're just seeing the stuff from then, but they've been traveling since they released their light that we can see now. So it's hard. It's tough thinking about, like, the early universe. Like, it throws most people's brains into a blender.
Scientists published a rigorous analysis of the data from DESI's first year of observations.
Though, right? It's why I went into it.
The results revealed something startling. If dark energy were the cosmological constant, galaxies would appear to be accelerating apart at an unchanging rate. But DESI showed that in the universe's most recent history, many galaxies appeared closer together than expected, suggesting that dark energy is weakening over time.
Right. So the energy, if that constant had an energy, they expected with that particular energy that they would be further out. But now that they're not further out, they clearly did not have that particular energy, which means that... What is that? It's like a gnat or a mosquito or something. Anyway, so these closer galaxies are accelerating more than these ones that are further away, which means that there was a changing energy, I think, is what they're saying.
This is not at all what we were thinking that we would be obtaining with this first year results. So that was an amazing surprise.
The DESI data reveals the expansion rate of the universe by measuring the size of the BAO feature as a function of time. If dark energy is the cosmological constant, the rate should hold steady at a value of 1.
That's where we started to see hints of a possible deviation from lambda CDM.
To claim a discovery, physicists must prove a 5 sigma level of confidence, about a 1 in a million probability that the findings are a result of random chance. When the DESI scientists pooled their data with other sets of astronomical observations, they achieved a probability of 3.5 sigma.
You know what really bothers me? On YouTube especially, and which is why, like, a lot of people, not a lot, but people will come in here and like, oh, have you seen this and that? And it's these videos that are like, oh, the James Webb Space Telescope discovered this. Physics have to go back to the drawing board on the entirety of physics. It's like, no, that's not how this works. It's people doing that to like gain clicks, and it's so fucking annoying. Because now, like at the planetarium, I had this happen to me. We had this like holiday dinner thing. Somebody was asking me about something. I'm like, that they saw something about the James Webb Space Telescope, and they're like, oh, I think it may have even been about this, about the galaxy stuff. I'm like, that doesn't discredit anything. It means that we need to tweak our models. It doesn't mean that we were wrong. It just means that we're still discovering things. And I have to like unteach people. And like, don't even get me started on like flat earth shit, because that's gone viral. You ever watch Professor Dave? He's pretty good at debunking all of that stuff, but it's, no, everything we know is what we know. We now have to get into the weeds, as it were.
About a 1 in 300
like
chance
our
that it's
knowledge
a statistical
isn't
fluke.
flawed.
We're not there yet. There's a serious hint, and that's where we're so excited about it, and we want to continue taking data. If we confirm that dark energy is varying with time, then it just is not compatible.
Oh,
with
yeah.
lambda.
So you talked about smaller bangs. There is, it was actually on Star Talk. Neil was talking about this dark energy researcher, and there is a very good way of explaining a lot of this with dark energy having a quote-unquote like second-ish Big Bang. This is like completely like cutting edge shit, so I'm not going to explain it, but it was on a Star Talk, a recent one, like probably within the past week or two. I highly recommend. Because it's like, okay, the Big Bang happened, and then a bit later, the dark matter Big Bang happened or something. It's some weird shit. Do you? Yeah, I do too. It's been so dead. So I started the new job in December, and I've had a few shows. But like, I've still been like learning the stuff, and to be honest, I get there at like 8. I put on Star Talk. I kind of do my own thing and figure out stuff, and that's kind of what it's been like. I mean, there's been shows and stuff, but Yeah, I too listen to them at work. I generally don't, like, since I've been doing it, I don't really do it on stream here because it's like, you know, game time, whatever for me, because that's all like work stuff. But, you know, it's whatever.
If some theorist comes along and can explain the observations, this is a Nobel Prize. It's a very tall task, but perhaps someone out there is up to it.
Super solids.
Imagine a phase of matter that's at once a solid and a liquid.
No,
like
no,
a solid,
no,
it has a rigid, spatially ordered structure. But it flows like a superfluid, entirely without friction.
It's a
this
Grabbag
is a
night.
supersolid.
I got my Jaeger.
Since the
Actually, I
1950s,
finished it.
condensed matter physicists
time.
have debated whether this exotic phase of matter exists. But this year, scientists at the University of Innsbruck in Austria created a supersolid in the lab for the first time.
A super
The supersolid state of matter is one of these unique situations in which you can really see directly the impact of quantum mechanics on measurable properties of a system.
The results may help explain how matter behaves in some of the most extreme conditions in the universe.
So a superfluid is whenever you cool down a liquid, I guess usually like hydrogen, right? And it goes into this new material called like a Bose-Einstein condensate, where all of the material is in the same quantum state. Like, there's no like perturbations or anything, and it all acts as if it's one single thing. So what is this?
In 1937, scientists cooled liquid helium-4 to just above absolute zero.
Helium-4.
They
I was
observed a
wrong.
new phase of matter, the
It's helium.
superfluid, which flows like a fluid with zero viscosity.
Here you see the liquid passing into the superfluid
Superfluids
phase.
are weird.
In 1949,
Because what is happening? What is happening there is that the helium is in here, and it's actually climbed up the walls, and it's dripping down. Like, it almost doesn't like obey gravity. It's very weird.
Here you see the liquid passing into the superfluid phase.
in 1949, the future Nobel laureate Lars Onsager predicted that this frictionless behavior could be partly explained by a bizarre phenomenon, the formation of vortices, or microscopic quantum tornadoes.
That's really the fingerprint, I would say,
quantum
even the
tornadoes.
hallmark of superfluidity.
So
there's a very simple picture to understand this. Imagine that you have a bucket. If you put a superfluid inside this bucket, if you rotate the bucket very slow, the superfluid would just stay at rest. It would not move at all. Then you exceed a critical velocity, and then the system has to respond in some way.
The rotation frequency
is
so large that the fluid inside cannot ignore anymore that something is happening. There is all this angular momentum that we are imposing. So instead of globally rotating, the superfluid creates a number of very small tornadoes.
I'm a big Marvel simp, whatever. I know people hate the recent stuff. I'm like the easiest moviegoer ever. Like, if something entertained me for 2.5 hours or 2 hours, I'm great. I liked it. I'm a basic bitch in that way. But I'm just thinking, like, back to Marvel, Ant-Man, when they go into the quantum world and there's like these quantum vortexes. That's what literally is here. Like, it's not something made up.
These quantum tornadoes were also predicted to exist in the supersolid, an exotic phase of matter with both superfluid properties and a rigid solid structure.
You need to detect the two natures of the system. So you need to detect the solid part and the superfluid part.
We knew very well the importance of observing vortices.
To create these vortices, you need to put your system under rotation, but our supersolid state is quite fragile. And so we needed to find a good way to rotate the system without destroying it.
The Innsbruck team
I learned all about
magnetic
this
properties
in,
of dysprosium atoms
we
to steer
took a
their
class
system.
called solid state
lasers,
physics.
we cool these out.
Which is weird because we learned about superfluids in solid state physics, but kind of where that class ended, we were talking about superconductors and stuff, and this is tangentially related to that. Why it does it? See, that's... Why is a very touchy word in physics. We can tell you how and when it does it. Why is it's a touchy word. Believe me, I asked one of my professors. Sadly he passed away. He was like 90 when I took him, but like he was the most interesting guy in the world. You ever see those commercials? That was basically him. He had like World War II Purple Hearts and shit, and was a nuclear physicist on submarines and shit. Way much more wild stuff than I'd ever do. But I asked him, I was like, why does spinning an electron produce a magnetic field? Like, I know that it does, but like, why? What is the mechanism? What is like the underlying mechanism? Why does a moving electric current create a magnetic field? And he's like, oh, you're asking the wrong question. That is not in the purview of physics. We can tell you how it does it and when it does it, but not why it does it. That's a philosophical kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, I love talking about that shit. Sadly, I signed up for a philosophy of science class, but it didn't make, and I'm so sad that it didn't. Yeah. That was even in grad school too. Like, I went all undergrad into grad school, and I thought I'd asked a question, and it's the human experience, I guess.
Atoms down to very close to the absolute zero. You can trap these atoms, and you have that the system behave as a whole single quantum wave.
The team steered the atom's internal magnetic field about 50 times a second, fast enough to generate vortices while preserving the delicate quantum phase.
And we saw the presence of these little holes. These are the vortices.
For the first time, they observed the dual nature of a supersolid.
It was producing exactly the same images as the simulation.
That is wild. That is the best thing ever. Like, whenever you come up with a theory and then you're like, okay, and you finally get the technology to do it, and then you do it, and it's exactly, like, pretty much exactly what you predicted. There's got to be no better feeling than that.
We're really able to observe it, and this was a big result.
In the long term, studying the dynamics of supersolids could help us understand mysterious quantum behaviors like superconductivity. But the Innsbruck team already discovered a surprising link to astrophysics.
We recently found a possible application of the rotating supersolids in nature for a system that is actually very far away from us, which is a neutron star.
Called it.
The inner crust of the...
I was in grad school. I was in a little band or whatever. Played guitar and stuff, and there were 3 other astronomy grad students, and we kind of all went undergrad together and then went to grad school. And we started a band. We're very good, but it was fun. It's called ourselves Pulsar. I thought it was pretty fitting for like a musical kind of physics-y thing.
This neutron star is predicted to be a modulated
played like 2
superfluid.
shows.
This is exactly what we usually call a supersolid state.
Some astrophysicists now suspect that a neutron star's supersolid interior may explain a strange phenomenon known as a glitch, where the star briefly changes its rotation speed.
Sometimes they spin up for a very short moment, and then they slow down. And so one theory say that the vortex which are created in the supersolid at some point during the slowing down of the star start to escape, and they crash into the wall of the star, transferring angular momentum and making the star spinning up.
Interesting.
Of course, we cannot have access to neutron stars because they are too far away, but we can have access to rotating super solids in a lab with vortices inside of it.
We had no idea that we could make this connection, and that's the beauty to science and exchange of idea and going and speaking with people very far away from your domain of investigation is a very nice project. I'm very excited.
See, what's really cool with me is like my field of study, like the big one was in exoplanets, and I got to talk with geologists and not really pertinent exactly like directly to my field of study, but you got to go like exobiology, like alien life and stuff. So all of that was really cool because all of that kind of intermingles, right? Exoplanets, habitable zone, Goldilocks zone. Then can life be here? What kind of atmosphere can form on these planets? Like what temperatures are these planets? How big there's a lot that goes into like exoplanet stuff, which is pretty neat. Quantum geometry.
This is the amplituhedron. Hidden within its geometry is the answer to one of the most fundamental questions in physics.
Ooh.
What happens when particles collide?
Bad stuff.
In the decades since the discovery of the amplituhedron, physicists have looked for other shapes that predict the outcomes of particle interactions. This year,
amplitude dice? I've never heard of this. I'm in the dark on this one. There's so much stuff. Like, whenever you say, like, I put in the title, oh, astrophysicist, might as well cash in on that as much as I can. But like, people ask me about shit in the solar system, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know just a lot about that. I like stuff outside of our solar system. So like all the rocket stuff, I watch the rocket launches and stuff on here. I have plenty of them, I'm pretty sure, saved. And I know about orbital mechanics and everything like that. You have to, but like, I don't know much about the rocket itself, because I'm gonna be honest, that's like an engineering thing. I'm not an engineer, I'm a physicist. So like, I've had people shit on me with that. It's like, oh, you don't know anything, you don't even know about this rocket. It's like, dude, there's a lot of stuff to know. I kind of focus my area elsewhere. It's fine. There's so much to know out there. Nobody can know it all. I can tell you what I think and why I think of what I think, and give you reasons for my mindset of how I get to the conclusion that I do. But there's a bunch of shit out there to know.
Physicists led by Carolina Figueiredo and Nima
I disagree with that. Astronomer is like a subclass of a physicist, because you have like quantum physicists, you have astrophysicists, and like all astronomy and astrophysics are the same nowadays. You have thermodynamics, thermophysicists, you have general relativity kind of physicists. They're if you play a game like an RPG, they're like a subclass. You got the fighter, and then the fighter could turn into a knight or a samurai or a monk or whatever. It's like everyone takes all the same physics, and then you kind of trickle down into your niche, as it were.
Arkani Hamed had a breakthrough, linking geometry with real-world physics. Particle interactions are difficult to predict. Because quantum physics forbids these events from being observed directly, physicists can learn only the initial conditions.
Yeah, but it's not a but nobody just like discovers stuff. Like, because to discover stuff, you're going to use light. You have to know quantum mechanics from the light. You get a Doppler effect. You have to know a bunch of optics. Like, all of that stuff is physics in a general sense. And you're just applying these things to particular environments, I guess, would be the best way. Because, like, everyone takes everything. But then the people in astronomy take astrophysics and observational astronomy and stuff. And then the people that want to go in, like, quantum, they'll take more advanced quantum and things like that. So at least that's the route that was offered at my college. Yeah, because I mean, I would say that you would be right if this were before 1900. You would have a definite differing of astronomy and physics, but now it's kind of all tied in together. And in fact, I genuinely don't. All of these like classifications and stuff are very much human made. There's not really a difference between even like physics and chemistry. Chemistry is just an applied physics. And then you go to biology, which is just an applied chemistry. And this is a book that I actually have always wanted to write. And then you go up from biology and you go into like, you can branch off and you go into like sociology, or really I guess you would go into like psychology, like how living things interact with one another. And then you could go up into sociology of like groups and tribes and how, you know, that kind of forms. And then you can go up maybe even one more to like this planetary city kind of thing, because I was thinking about this on the way home. I was like, in what way is our planet not, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but like a siphonophore, right? That's a biological term of individual living units that provide a function to this overall like super animal. It's like, well, humans make cities and those cities produce things and expand, and those, they trade with one another and provide different functions, and our Earth itself is full of these cities that we've combined, and now we're kind of like spreading out and like getting our senses into the universe. I'm like, in what way is our planet not that? And I can't think of a good one. And in fact, life, like defining life, is pretty hard. So it's, I'm pretty against, and we're humans, so we like to do it. We love classifying things. But I'm pretty kind of against like a rigid structure of science, because everything kind of melds into everything else. Sorry.
And the outcome.
That's just my view on it.
You have a bunch of particles coming in and a bunch of particles coming out, and you don't know what happened in the middle. But the way we have to compute what happens is to pretend that we're actually kind of following the path of the particles. That's what Feynman diagrams are about.
I love Feynman diagrams.
Physicists use Feynman.
This is kind of what I was talking about with whenever you get into like atomic physics and really nuclear physics, you have these like interactions of different particles, and Richard Feynman came up with this like very elegant way of like how particles could interact with one another to produce outgoing particles. So like you have particles coming in, something happens, and then you have the particles going out. And that something is all of these. So like you have an exchange of a photon or a W boson or something. And they're very like childish in that way, and that's not like a like putting it down. It's very elegant in that way. Yeah, yeah. So these Feynman diagrams, I love Feynman diagrams. It's like, what? Am I in second grade again? But that's the beauty of it, right? That's like Einstein, the way he came up with stuff, he thought as a child thought. Famously, Einstein was terrible at math. He was just really, really smart at reasoning. And it's super important to say that like all like the big breakthroughs in physics are not from one person. You can go read like Einstein's letters back and forth to Niels Bohr and this and that and the other. Like it really is like a community of people talking about things. What Einstein said and did, yeah, I mean, it changed everything, general relativity especially. But like Newton and Leibniz, they fucking hated each other, as is my understanding. But they did correspond back and forth. Like it's not an isolated thing.
Feynman diagrams to track what might happen in a collision using lines to represent particle trajectories.
I'll be back.
A Feynman diagram is one
something.
such
I'll
possibility,
be like
but because of quantum mechanics, the final answer is given by the sum over all such possibilities.
When you add up terms for all possible Feynman diagrams, you get a number called the scattering amplitude, the probability of a certain outcome. But that method has a big drawback.
There can be many, 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 many pictures that contribute to a given process. The Feynman rules, while very correct, make it computationally intractable to make predictions for experiments. But every single time we work very hard to compute some prediction for some experiment, the prediction itself mocks us by how simple it is. This famous prediction that got Feynman his Nobel Prize, it's many pages of algebra, and when all of the dust settles, you find the number 1.
There's been kind of an effort to try to reveal a certain simplicity that was hidden in the standard way that you compute it. We're trying to find different structures, different ideas that land you on the answer kind of directly.
Arkani Hamed and his team discovered the amplituhedron while exploring a connection between Feynman diagrams and mathematical objects called polygon triangulations.
These triangulations of polygons is literally just a set of edges that meet on a certain vertex, which is exactly what we use to describe particle interactions. A Feynman diagram is basically a graph. The amplituhedron was encoding the information of all these kind of Feynman diagrams that were found for a particular.
Someone shit on me one time because I went to get some water or something, and they were like, "I hate reactors like you. You just put the thing on and then go away," because that was like a big thing. It's like, dude, I come back and I've still heard everything and I comment on it. Like, it's not a big deal, I promise. Now, if I didn't and I just left it here running, yeah, I'm not gonna be that guy.
Theory.
The amplituhedron was a shortcut. Its volume gave the sum of these Feynman diagrams, the scattering amplitude for the particle interactions outcome.
I could entirely describe how to make predictions in this theory without ever referring to even a particle, honestly.
But there was a catch. It didn't
So
work
we're talking
for
about
real-world
Feynman
particles.
diagrams. You summon all of
Arkani
it,
Hamed's
and then
team
you get
soon
the
identified
answer,
another
and
shape, the associahedron, which encoded Feynman
That's what
diagrams
they've-
for a theory of different particles. This is when Carolina Figueiredo came across a striking coincidence.
Oh, yeah?
Scattering amplitudes take the form of fractions. Physicists often focus on collisions where the denominator becomes small, which represent likely outcomes for particle interactions. But Figueiredo began looking for situations where the numerator becomes small, representing unlikely interactions.
Sure.
There was something sitting upstairs that was encoding some.
So you have, let me try and get this right. You have two groups of people that want to figure out how this thing is working. And one group is going to look for a denominator that's very small, because dividing by a small number gives you a larger number. Like 1 divided by 0.5 gives you 2. Take that all the way to infinity, it's much more likely to happen. So there's another group of people that are coming at it the opposite way of trying to throw out stuff that isn't going to happen instead of looking for the stuff that is more likely to happen. Interesting. I think that's what's happening. Okay.
Likely interactions.
There was something sitting upstairs that was encoding some extra information.
First, Figueiredo used the icosahedron to look at collisions involving simple particles known as colored scalars. She found that certain collisions flattened its volume to 0, meaning that they represented collisions forbidden for these particles.
The amplitude is something which is related with the volume, and so from there it was easy to understand that if I found limits where this geometry collapsed, like reduced in dimension, then the volume would go to 0. So
That's
the amplitude would also have to vanish.
It's very math-based.
Figueiredo also looked at collisions involving pions and gluons, two other real-world particles.
Sure.
She found that all the theories shared the same zeros, meaning that they outlawed exactly the same particle collisions.
What we observed is that for 3 different theories, a similar feature was there. Not just similar, but like remarkably similar, like almost identical. This was very striking at the time just because there was no obvious reason for these zeros to be located at precisely the same spots.
These hidden zeros revealed that the 3 different theories were described by the same function, deriving from curves on geometric surfaces.
There's kind of a master object that encoded all the 3.
Interesting. Hidden zeros!
Different theories. The reason why we understood that there were these zeros is precisely because we had the formulation in terms of the geometry.
This is the first time that amplitudes for real-world particles have been calculated in a geometric way. It builds on the dream of the amplituhedron, suggesting that the right shapes can lead to new and more efficient ways of understanding the quantum world.
Okay. So, damn you, Jaeger. Each of these interactions are more or less likely to happen. They're more or less likely to happen in a given area. And so if they don't happen, the area would be smaller. Yeah. So if particular versions of these interactions happen that are small, it collapses us down on a 2D plane. This is like, so whenever I went to college, I was like gung-ho on getting a double major in math and physics. That did not work out. I slam dunked all of my like computational mathematical classes, but when I started getting into like the proofs and like the really high level shit, I sucked at it. It is amazing to me, and I still watch math videos all the time. I love math. But like the really, really crazy stuff, like even crazier than quantum mechanics stuff, just this like very abstract shit. It just I had to graduate. I had to keep going, and I had to change my math to a math minor, which still all computational classes, just the proof-based classes are. I only took like 2 of them, and I passed them, but I wasn't going to take any more. It's too much time. it's what I think though is happening is like, okay, you got these 3 here. Let's say these aren't very likely to happen, so it's gonna like close this down. It's gonna bring this vertex down here, and I'm assuming these other ones are all correspond. I don't know. I have to do some research. Maybe one night we can go into research of this. It would be fucking wild. Need another bottle of Jaeger or something, but that would bring this down. So if like they all collapse in a single point, not a single point, but like in a 2D shape, like on the bottom, then those that are left are how that thing interacts, how those, particles interact with one another, is what I could be completely wrong, but that's what my mind is telling me. So this thing can morph in shape depending on what is more or less likely. Like if these three guys here on the right were like how this particle interacted with itself, it would blow that polygon up and effectively shrink the other ones, is how I'm trying to think of it, in like an origami type of way.
The complexity of the computation, it's highly reduced, precisely because you're packaging everything in an extremely nice way. You're exploiting all the structure.
It's tremendously powerful to have not just a machinery for generating scattering amplitudes, but to have a geometric interpretation behind it. I'm very excited that there's an alternative.
That is really cool. I don't know that I would have put that in the physics video. I would have probably put that in the math video. But I mean, it just proves my point, like this bleed over into different realms of science and math. I haven't seen this one at all, so I'm completely in the dark on computer science.
Since ChatGPT launched in
So a
2022,
graph of the possible
large
ways for
language
the
models
shape to have... Actually, it's a graph for the possible ways of the shape to have zero volume. Because they wanted to collapse it all down. And the ones that, like... Imagine getting something and, like, smushing it down on a table. And, like, all the stuff that is left is how it interacts with other things, is what I'm getting at. Is what I'm thinking of. So, like, you smush the volume down, which means that some of those sides of that polyhedron are going to be zero, while the ones that are not are just like the face of the thing that's smushed down on the table. That's what's interacting or allowing the particle to interact with other particles, those different kinds of ways. Because what they're saying here is like the Feynman diagrams, there are tons of just different ways these things can interact. So you have like an input, then you have an output. The shit in the middle, nobody knows. And they're getting close to like pinning that down, is what I think is happening. I could be wrong. No, it's not even that. It's just like a purely like mathematical convenience of doing it. It's like I was talking about it earlier, this thing called the Dirac delta function. It's a convenience of how a wave smashes down and normalizes into a particle. It's purely a mathematical thing. Some people do think that it is a physical thing though. So I don't know, you might be right about that. But yeah, it from what it seems is like a purely math thing to help us get to the answer. It's like inventing calculus, because we had no way of like doing limits with addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. So we invented calculus, or Newton and Leibniz did.
Have progressed at
Similar
a rapid
thing,
pace,
I think.
often developing unpredictable abilities.
When GPT-4 came out, it's clearly felt like the chatbot has some level of understanding.
But do these abilities reflect actual understanding?
The Grok
or are the
thing,
models simply...
I do a lot of AI stuff. Not that I'm like trying to replace artists or whatever, but I like saxophones. I like a lot of saxophones. I have 6 saxophones here. I like stupid nerdy shit. So what do? I'm like, draw this character playing this saxophone. And saxophones are notoriously hard to like render because of all the keys and you know, they look like steampunk instruments. But I love Scarlet Witch, Marvel, big Marvel guy, whatever. I've liked Scarlet Witch since the 90s. I'm like 38. I'm an 80s baby. So, in Grok, the Twitter thing, whatever, the AI, it like got released to everyone for free. I was like, draw Scarlet Witch playing the saxophone. And I'm actually like kind of scared how realistic it is. Hold on.
Repeating their training data, like so-called stochastic parrots.
There's a lot of scientific interest in understanding the capabilities and the properties of large language models.
How do we evaluate these large language models? We need evaluations that are clearly relevant to the general purpose intelligence and language understanding.
Recently, researchers from Princeton and Google DeepMind created a mathematically provable argument for how language models develop so many skills.
This is just so worth showing. Oh, look, it's a shot of Jaeger that I used as my thing. Who'd have thought? I love Jaeger. Where are you? There it is. This is like totally fake. It's AI. I mean, she has her fingers placed where the keys are. These keys are mostly right. This shit fucking blew my mind. Because if you would show this picture to me for like 5 seconds, I'd say that was absolutely a real picture. I can see that it's not just because I'm super familiar with saxophones. Like if you look down here, that's not, but still, like just I couldn't tell you that it wasn't real. Like that one, yeah, her face looks a little weird, and it's like a synth-wavy thing. But even then, the fingers are right. Right now, you have to render shadows from the modeling. Oh, interesting. I need to get a new card. But these are all, I'm just talking about like AI rendering and stuff, not necessarily like graphics card game stuff. But I have not seen a picture this good from AI ever in my life. It is scary. I only have a 1070 GTX. I'm still a plebe. I am going to get a new actually, the next thing that I'm going to get is probably a Steam Deck, because I want to have something that I can take up to work in like Steam Deck. I hear it plays Marvel Rivals pretty well. Yeah, I need to get a new one because Marvel Rivals is pushing that video card, so I think it's about time for sure.
And designed a method for testing them.
Now that I have
the results suggest that the largest models develop new skills in a way that hints at understanding.
Language models are basically trained to solve.
Oh yeah, they came out with that new FIFA game. It's like Rocket League, but with like humans or something, I think. That was weird. I'm terrible at Rocket League. But yeah, FIFA. It's like Rocket League with humans, I think. Never heard of it before.
Word prediction tasks.
So they are given a lot of text, and at every step it has some idea of what the next word is, and that idea is expressed in terms of a probability. And if the next word didn't get high enough probability, there's a slight adjustment that's done. And after many, many, many trillions of such small adjustments, it learns to predict the next word.
Over time, researchers have observed neural scaling laws, an empirical relationship between the performance of language models and the data used to train them. As models improve, they minimize training loss or make fewer errors. This sudden increase in performance produces new behaviors, a phenomenon called emergence.
There's no scientific.
I'm like partnered and everything on Twitch, not affiliated or whatever. And that all came through Mario, like when Mario Maker 2 came out. And like I like Mario, don't get me wrong, but I play whatever the fuck I want to play because this isn't like my job or whatever. It's like, oh, you know, I'll watch science videos or I'll play Marvel or I'll watch other videos. I just do whatever the hell I want. So I like Overwatch. I don't like that they rug pulled us. When they knew that we weren't going to get the PvE a year before Overwatch 2 launched. And then in March of what was it last year, they were like, yeah, we're not doing that. I pretty much quit the game for about a year, and then I started playing a few months ago, and then Marvel Rivals came out, and I fucking love Marvel Rivals. So I think Overwatch is great. I think it's one of the best free-to-play games. I would definitely say that if Overwatch 1 didn't come out, but it did, and now I don't like how they treated us with that rug pull. Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. I think the best thing about Marvel Rivals is that everyone is playing it now, and Overwatch is going to it already does it has competition, and that's good. Because before you had like what Concord. I'm gonna be honest. I wish Battleborn would have lived where Overwatch didn't, because I liked Battleborn, but smaller studio, not Blizzard. Everyone's Overwatch. But all of the shooters died, the hero shooters, but Marvel, they didn't see Marvel Rivals coming. And that is only a good thing for all of us. They're going to have to make better shit to compete.
Explanation as to why that's happening. So this phenomena is not well understood.
I haven't played a lot of
researchers
Valorant,
wondered if GPT-4's sudden improvements could be explained by emergence.
that's kind of in
Perhaps
the
the model had
realm
learned
for sure.
compositional generalization.
It's more like
the
a
ability to
Counter-Strike
combine
thing,
language
though, right?
skills.
This was some kind of a meta capability. There was no mathematical framework to think about that. And so we had to come up with a mathematical framework.
The researchers found their first hint by considering neural scaling laws.
So those scaling laws already suggest that there's some statistical phenomenon going on. So random graphs have a long history in terms of thinking about
I don't know why I never kept, like, because I did like the training or whatever in Valorant, and I didn't hate it or anything. I just didn't play. I think I must have gone back to Overwatch because like I played with my sister a lot in Overwatch. Also Valorant was a little bit toxic, but Overwatch brings out the worst in me. No game does it like that. Overwatch is pretty toxic. I always wanted to get into like League of Legends and Dota, but that I'd have no idea what the fuck I'm doing in those games, and like everyone is super fucking like ridiculously horrible. And I played Halo 2 back in the Xbox days. Valorant, yeah. But like I haven't watched Arcane because it's League of Legends universe, and I know if I watch Arcane, I'm going to be like, "Oh, I want to play League of Legends." And then I'm going to download it and then I'm going to play it, and people are going to like really shit on me, and rightfully so. And then I'm just going to be like, fuck this, and then go back to another game. That's exactly what will happen. COD 4. I don't play Call of Duty. Halo, what? Or I know of Call of Duty. I've watched the videos of, Halo 2 was COD 4 bad. 100%. Man, people nowadays, they wouldn't last a second in an early Call of Duty or Halo lobby. I'm a big Halo guy too.
Statistical phenomena.
Random graphs are made of nodes, which are connected by randomly generated edges. The researchers built their mathematical model with bipartite graphs, which contain two types of nodes, one representing chunks of text, and the other language skills.
The edges of the graph, the connections, correspond to which skill is needed to understand.
I know how to program, but
now the researchers needed to connect these bipartite graphs to actual language models. But there was a problem.
Don't have access to the training data. So if I'm evaluating that language model on my evaluation set, how do I know?
I got in and I played Overwatch Infinite. And I still love Overwatch Infinite. I think the Forge came out and they did good. I'm so like 343 is not great, but nobody teabags anymore in Halo. Like they do sometimes, but nothing like it used to be. I was actually kind of disappointed
that the language model hasn't seen that data into the training corpus.
There was one crucial piece of information that the researchers could access.
Using that scaling law, we made a prediction. As models get better at predicting the next word, that they will be able to combine more of the underlying skills.
According to random graph theory, every combination arises from a random sampling of possible skills.
There's no way you weren't going to.
If there are 100 skill nodes in the graph, and you want to combine 4 skills, then there are about 100 to the 4th power, or 100 million ways to combine them.
That's a lot.
The researchers developed a test called Skill Mix to evaluate if large language models can generalize to combinations of skills they likely hadn't seen before.
So the model is given a list of skills and a topic, and then it's supposed to create a piece of text on that topic using that list of skills.
For example, the researchers asked GPT-4 to generate a short text about sewing that exhibits spatial reasoning, self-serving bias, and metaphor. Here's what it answered.
I think the metaphor thing would be the hardest thing to pull off reasonably. Spatial reasoning should be the easiest thing. But like to relate something to something else completely different, I don't even know how you would do that. Like, humans can, but...
In the labyrinth of sewing, I am the needle navigating between the intricate weaves.
Okay.
Any errors are due to the faulty compass of low-quality thread, not my skill.
We showed in our mathematical framework that as we scale up, the model is able to learn these skills.
You would see this increase in compositional capability as you scale up the models.
When given the skill mix test, small language models struggle to combine just a couple of skills. Medium-sized models could combine 2 skills more comfortably. But the largest models, like GPT-4, could combine 5 or 6 skills. Because these models couldn't have seen all possible combinations of skills, the researchers argue that it must have developed compositional generalization through emergence.
Once the model has learned these language skills, a model can generalize to random, unseen compositions of these skills.
What they showed was that their mathematical model had this property of compositionality, and that by itself gives this ability to extrapolate and compose new combinations from existing pieces. And that is really the hallmark of novelty and the hallmark of creativity. And so the argument is that large language models can move beyond being stochastic.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what you said. It's like emergence. It gave them these like simple properties, and they got more complexity out of it than it should have had. So something else is going on here.
The researchers are already working to extend the skill mix evaluation to other domains as part of a larger effort to understand the capabilities of large language models.
Can we create an ecosystem of skill mix, which is not just valid for language skills, but mathematical skills as well as coding skills?
So skill mix was one example where we made a prediction by just mathematical thinking, and that was correct. But there are all kinds of other phenomena that we probably are not aware of, and we need some understanding of that.
Hamiltonian. Ooh.
Quantum systems are some of the most complex structures in nature. To model them, you need to compute a Hamiltonian, a super equation that describes how particles interact locally to produce the system's possible physical properties. But entanglement spreads information across the system, correlating particles that are far.
Hamiltonians, at least in physics, is you give it the Hamiltonian's like a general version of like energy, and that's very good because it's you don't learn that in undergrad physics. You learn it like classical mechanics. You just give it all of the potential and all of the energies, potential, kinetic, if you want like rotational, something like that. And what it does is after you do all the math stuff for it, it will spit out all of your like equations that you would normally do. Like you'd be like, oh, this is the the acceleration and the X and Y axis and all of this, and you would compute everything. But like if you throw it all into the Hamiltonian, it'll just give you all the shit that you want to know. It's very cool. Very, very useful.
Far apart. This makes computing Hamiltonians exceptionally
I don't know
difficult.
what they're...
You have a giant system of atoms. It's a very big problem to learn all those parameters. You could never hope to write down the Hamiltonian. If you ever even tried to write it down, the game would be over, and you wouldn't have an efficient algorithm.
People were actually trying to prove that efficient algorithms were impossible in this regime.
But a team of computer scientists from MIT and UC Berkeley cracked the problem. They created an algorithm that can produce the Hamiltonian of a quantum system at any constant temperature.
So what I was describing Hamiltonian is Hamiltonian physics in the classical sense, like Newtonian physics, not quantum mechanics.
The results could have big implications for the future of quantum computing and understanding exotic quantum behavior.
So when we have systems that behave and do interesting things like superfluidity and superconductivity, you want to understand the building blocks and how they fit together to create those properties that you want to harness for technological reasons.
So we're trying to learn this object, which is the Hamiltonian. It's defined by a small set of parameters. And what we're trying to do is learn these parameters. What we have access to is these experimental measurements of the quantum system. So the question then becomes, can you learn a description of the system through experiments?
Previous efforts in Hamiltonian learning produced algorithms that could measure particles at high temperatures. But these systems are largely classical, so there's no entanglement between the particles. The MIT and Berkeley teams set their sights on the low-temperature quantum regimes.
I wanted to understand what kinds of strategies worked algorithmically on the classical side, and what could be manifestations of those strategies on the quantum side.
You would want the low-temperature versions of it in the quantum side, because like the supersolids, like what I said, what it was said is that all of the particles are liquids, the superfluids. All those particles are like in the same state, so like you don't have a jillion things to compute. In this, I guess they're doing it, you know, you start small and then build up.
Once you look at the problem in the right way and you bring to bear these tools, it turns out that you can really make progress on these problems.
First, the team ported over a tool from classical machine learning called polynomial optimization. This allowed them to approximate the measurements of their system as a family of polynomial equations.
We were like, maybe we can write Hamiltonian learning as a polynomial optimization problem. And if we manage to do this, maybe we can try to optimize this polynomial system efficiently.
So all of a sudden it's in a domain that's more familiar and you have a bunch of algorithmic tools at your disposal.
You can't solve polynomial systems, but what you can do is you can sort of solve a relaxation of them.
We use something called the sum of squares relaxation to actually solve this polynomial system.
Starting with a challenging polynomial optimization problem, the team used the sum of squares method to relax its constraints.
I use
this expanded the equations to a larger allowable set of solutions, effectively converting it from a hard problem to an easier one.
As crazy as
the real trick is to argue that when you've expanded the set of solutions, you can still find a good solution inside it. You need a procedure to take that approximate relaxed solution and round it back into an actual solution to the problem you really cared about. So that's really where the coolest parts of the proof happen.
The researchers proved that the sum of squares relaxation could solve their learning problem, resulting in the first efficient Hamiltonian algorithm in a low-temperature regime.
So we first make some set of measurements of the macroscopic properties of the system, and then we use these measurements to set up a system of polynomial equations, and then we solve the system of polynomial equations. So the output is a description of the local interactions in the system.
Local being
There are actually some very interesting learning problems that are at the heart of understanding quantum systems.
And to me, that was the most exciting part, was really a connection between two different worlds.
This combination of tools is really...
From what I gather, because I had to do something similar, is I was modeling exoplanets using the Kepler data systems, and they would just dump terabytes of information out there, and I would get them and run them through, and you do these things called light curves, and there's a enormous amount of shit that you can find out with something just passing in front of something else. It's like the planet passes in front of the star's light dims, and it's like how wide is that dimming can give you like the speed of the planet, like how big the dip is that it dims can give you the size of the planet, all kinds of crazy shit like that. And yeah, with that you can get like the mass of the planet, the eccentricity of it, all kinds of shit. And there's like 36 variables that you have to use, and there's something called the sum of the least squares, where like if you plotted this in like a quote-unquote 36 dimensional graph, which you can't even think of, but if you did that, there would be and you would guess effectively, right? Like you would just put in numbers that you thought, and that's what modeling is. Like we had you have this graph, and my job was to take this program to figure out, finesse, as they call it, what kind of parameters would fit that curve. And so you got the data, you want to fit a curve to a data, and to do that you kind of guess, and you have like an idea maybe of how it works. But then the beautiful thing about this sum of the least squares type of thing is you put that in, it generates a curve, and you're like, okay, well that's pretty close, I guess. And then you kind of iterate something, like you say, well, let's make the mass, like, let's vary it by like 1/100th. And then it'll put that in, and it'll do this recursive calculation thing and kind of like close in on the data. It matches it much more efficiently than just like I or any other human could do. So you do that. The beauty of the computer is it can do like hundreds, if not thousands of runs of that, and like really, really match it up to the data. And like what they're talking about here as far as like I assume with this quantum mechanical system is they're figuring out what kind of interactions and things could give them exactly the same output that they got from the experiment. And then you're pretty sure, like, once you get that, once you've modeled it, that's what's going on, right? So that's what they're doing. It's called like when I did it, it was called like least what is it, sum of the least squares, or whatever the hell it was, something similar. Anyway, it's just like a recursive thing that the computer does. And this, with the quantum mechanics stuff, it's like a jillion different kind of waves that could interact with one another, and I guess that's what this does. Brain on fire, stuck on the particle. Okay.
The local interactions in the system.
It's wild shit.
There are actually some very interesting learning problems that are at the heart of understanding quantum systems.
And to me, that was the most exciting part, was really a connection between two different worlds.
This like combination of tools is really interesting. It's something I haven't seen before. I'm hoping it's like a useful perspective with which to tackle other questions as well.
I think we find ourselves at the start of this new bridge between theoretical.
And we're seeing it a lot now, even with just these, is how we're finding something over here that can be used to find something over here, like in a completely different realm of study. This is going to be interesting. I know nothing about this. Ancient ancestor.
You have an ancestor that lived billions of years ago, who goes by the name of Luca.
Ancestor.
Luca is the last universal common ancestor to all modern life on Earth.
Including us, including bacteria, frogs, fish, trees, fungi. Everything is alive and it has a cell.
In a 2024 paper, researchers peered back in time to paint the most complete picture of Luca yet, using evidence from a wide range of scientific disciplines.
And come up with a holistic understanding of when Luca existed and how it interacted with the environment.
So what was Luca like?
Ever since scientists realized that all life on Earth shares certain characteristics, that suggested to us that there was some common ancestor. Darwin, in fact, in one of his letters, said that if you trace his idea of evolution back to the very beginning, that would imply that there was some common ancestor. So it was really Darwin who first started thinking about what that universal ancestor could have looked like.
Luca was not the origin of life on Earth, but the emergence of life as we know it today. And Luca was not alone.
We can think.
Yeah. Well. Okay. They're saying that probably. Okay. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. They're saying that like life may have gotten jump started and tried a bunch of different shit, and like maybe one of them happened to do whatever it needed to do. It wasn't that was the first time it happened, but it was the one that took off.
Think of Luca as more like a population rather than like a single individual.
And there probably were many different types of organisms living at that time whose descendants later died out fairly shortly thereafter, or maybe died out only recently.
But Luca survived and went on to evolve into all modern life. Today, there are two domains of cellular life descended from Luca: prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes include bacteria and archaea, which are comparatively simple cells. Eukaryotes are more complex and include all forms of complex multicellular life.
You know, we're paleontologists, most of us. We're interested in understanding early evolutionary history.
However, we can only really get back at this ancestral point looking at modern organisms.
To reveal our evolutionary history, Edmund Moody, Phil Donahue, and their team sought to reconstruct Luca's genome, or collection of genes.
And then from these, try and build kind of like a working metabolic network, and then use this as a basis to try and understand what Luca would have been like.
Their approach involved filling out an evolutionary family tree based on the genomic relationships among 700 living bacterial and archaean species.
What we need to do is infer a tree of those 700 species, those 700 genomes. In order to do that, you need to pull out genes which we think have evolved very slowly, been very conserved, haven't changed much over the billions of years.
Using a suite of software and loads of computing power, the team constructed a probabilistic gene tree leading back to Luca.
So this says, okay, well, we've got X number of genes, a probability of...
See, and this is going to be helped immensely by the AI computer shit that we just watched.
50% or a probability of 75%. Therefore, we think that these genes were probably in Luca.
By integrating the probabilities of thousands of gene families, the team estimated Luca's genome likely encoded 2,600 proteins.
Our main take-home result is that Luca is a complex organism, very similar, perhaps a bit smaller than a modern-day bacterium, for example.
Luca would have had a simple phospholipid membrane and the molecular machinery for maintaining a genome and building proteins. It could metabolize hydrogen gas and carbon dioxide.
But one of the really interesting things that we found, which was a complete surprise to us, was this CRISPR-Cas system.
CRISPR-Cas is a basic immune system cells use to fight off viral attacks.
Then some people are surprised that viruses would have been around that long ago.
Luca may have lived off of non-living sources, like...
Yeah, like viruses, some people think that like they were the first forms of life. Or at least evolved in tandem with life.
Hydrothermal vents or atmospheric gases. Or it may have died on the chemical waste of other microbes.
To me, it seems more likely that Luca would have been part of a complex ecosystem, theory. Even at that point in time, exchanging,
replicating,
products,
but they're not like
with all sorts of different.
For a complete picture, the team also needed to determine when Luca lived.
And so we used some molecular and paleontological methods to try to estimate its age by calibrating the branches within genome trees.
By comparing the rates of mutation over time across gene families, they were able to arrive at a date.
So we estimate Luca's age to be around 4.2 billion years old.
This is fairly soon after the Earth would have cooled off and been habitable for life to emerge.
To me, that really ancient age is very surprising because we reconstruct